All right, cool. So what we're going to talk about today, uh, first of all, I'm going to talk about psychological flaws and just explaining a little bit about that, just so that we know. I think in this, the only thing I can do for you guys is to help you be aware of what our psychological flaws are, because it's really funny. If I were to summarize like trading game in just one word, it will be contradiction, because everything that would make you a good trader is completely opposite from how we function on our daily routine as a human being. And there are books about it. I'm definitely going to recommend some reading material that's going to help you understand that more. I'm only going to touch on it just so that we are aware of it. And this is more like an internal thing, so I cannot help you with it. I can only help you be aware of it so that you can help yourself. The next thing I want to talk about, which to me is the most important thing when entering the market, is the risk management. And then next, I'm going to explain a little bit about how the market works, how different order can change the flow and create imbalances in the market. And then I'm going to talk about price action analysis versus technical analysis. And then I'll share with you guys some alpha in price action analysis and where it is more advanced as comparing to technical analysis. And then the last thing I'm going to talk about is a little bit about the application of that, which is the range trading. And to me, that is one of the most powerful thing. And it's also very simple. Cool. So we have 5 things to talk about. In terms of like psychological flaws, actually, I'm going to turn on the screen so maybe you guys can see me too. I got some note over here as well. So in terms of like psychological flaws, we have a whole lot, right? As human being, we have so many things that are against trading. For example, there's something called addiction to random rewards. So I think a lot of people experience this when they first start trading. When you go into trading and you trade and you make the first trade and you win, you get really excited, and that's chemical in your body that create that excitement, right? And we always want to feel good, so you enter the next trade and you are looking for that green color, right? But when it turned red, you consistently stay in it because you just addicted to that, right? And then when it turned red, sometimes you close it and then you re-enter. And then throughout the whole process, you're like, how the hell did I get here? And your account is already down like 30-40%, right? There is this one experiment that they did with monkeys, actually. So there's 2 monkeys. One monkey, every time you do a task, you give it a banana, right? And then the next time the monkey do the task, you give it a banana. And it's a routine like that all the time. But then the one day when you don't give the monkey the banana anymore after doing the task, right? You get confused, and then the next task is given, the monkey refused to do it. The second monkey, you don't give it reward all the time, and the reward is not the same. So when you tell the monkey to do a task, sometimes you give it a banana, sometimes you play with it, sometimes you don't give any reward, right? And with that second monkey, every time it's given a task, it still do it, because the monkey doesn't think that there's a result being attached to doing the work, right? And a lot of us as human beings, we are normally in the first monkey. So when you take a trade, it has to be green. And this is really dangerous for trader because we cannot take the losses, because trading is not absolute, right? And all these psychological flaws is really interesting, because as a trader, it's very simple. The task you got to do is very simple. You either buy or you sell, right? You long or you short. And that's based on a thesis that you have. You have to decide in your head that there's a higher probability of the market going up or going down, right? But once you have a thesis, that's a mental creation that we have in our head, right? And as human being, because we are logical being, if you create something, you're gonna love that idea, right? And if you love that idea, you're gonna protect it. That's just our daily life. We're like that. If you believe in something, you strongly believe in it. And then when you take a trade based on that thesis, you will protect that. And in this case, if it go the opposite way, you protect it with your money. And that's really dangerous. I can go in depth. There's about like 50 different names for so many different psychological flaws. And the bad thing is it's all hardwired into our DNA. But I would highly recommend reading Trading in the Zone by Mark Douglas. I'm gonna put that name in the chat. Trading in the Zone. If you just read this book, I think maybe like the first 3 or 4 chapters, it would break down really clearly all these psychological flaws to help you understand. And if you are aware of it, then you can take care of it better. But for me, this brings me to my second point in our discussion today. I'm gonna keep it really brief with the things that I can't go in details in, which is the risk management, because I find that since all these flaws are hardwired into our body, there's no absolute way to completely get rid of these flaws, right? The only thing we can do is to minimize it so that it doesn't affect our decision. And the best way to do so is in risk management. So I assume everybody here know about like stop losses, know about like risk reward ratio. Does anyone not know about those things? You can just put it in the chat. If you don't know it, just let me know. I can quickly just cover it for you guys. If not, it's fine. Okay, so let me just share my screen here, and then I'm gonna go into some note. Cool. All right. So when you enter a trade, right, you always have like the reward, which is pretty much your profit, or the TP level, and then you have your risk, which is where you put your stop loss, right? And for me, a lot of people take a lot of different trade, but if the basics of entering the trade, if your reward is not bigger than the risk, it makes no sense. Trading for me is almost like gambling. It's almost like gambling, right? Think of like going to the casino and let's say playing the roulette, and you only betting something very simple like, oh, I'm betting on red or on black, right? There's still a slight opportunity of you like completely losing, of both sides losing, right? So in this case, when you go into the casino, the risk reward ratio is designed against you, so that the more people play it, the more people lose. When you win, it's just a lucky thing. It's just one of those days, right? It's just, oh, I got lucky today. With trading, it's different because we can design when we want to choose to play the game. Let's say I have a game where I have a number from 1 to 10, right? And you have a choice of betting on odd or even. If your bet is right, you win, let's say 1 to 1.5. So if you bet $10 and you bet it right, I'm going to give you $15. But if you bet it wrong, you're going to lose the entire $10, right? I think everybody can imagine that this game is just a bad game. Nobody want to play this, right? Because the chances of odd and even is the same. When you win $5. When you lose $10. So over like a million games, you guarantee you're going to lose all your money. Now let's say that you have a way to determine when that number is going to be over 5. So only from 6 to 10, right? Actually, sorry, from 1 to 5. Let's say you have a way to determine that the result of this one game specifically has to be from 1 to 5. Then you know that out of 1 to 5, you have 1, 3, and 5 that are odd number, 2 and 4 that's even, right? Then you can choose to play only these games, and over the long time, it will provide a better return. So in trading, I can see a lot of good setup, but sometimes in the structure, it doesn't allow me to set a good stop loss. If I think that this is a really good chance, but the stop loss is so far away and my take profit is really small, sometimes I skip the trade entirely, or I go in with like a coffee money, some disposable amount, because it's just smarter, right? We have to manage our risk. I see trading as a gambling platform where the trader can make their own rule. And again, this go back to our psychological flaw, because when you create your own rule, you think these rules are in benefit for you, but the charts only show you a fraction of what's happening in the market, right? So when I enter a trade, I always have 4 things. I name them as CEST. My C is going to be my condition. So this is where any of your analysis come in. It could be price action analysis. It could be TA. You could just follow a big news that just dropped, or you could follow, one of those rumor, like buy the rumor, sell the news kind of thing. All of that, right? Or fundamental analysis. Like if you think a war is breaking out soon, you might go like a month before that, and then recently it make a blast to 2000, something like that, right? So this is your condition. E is my entry, right? So sometimes in my analysis, my entry would be in a range, and this is really depending on my thesis. Am I doing this as a scalp trade? Is it something that just really quick? I want to get in and out really quick. My stop loss is really tight. Or am I willing to weather the volatility for even a bigger win, right? And willing to lose a bigger chunk of my entry. So most of the time, people enter the market with just one entry, keeping it very simple. It's just one long or one short, right? I like to spread it out in terms of risk. Here's the thing. Let's say I want to go long, right? Let's say I want to go long. Let's say I'm longing something at $1, right? And I have a range of like 0.9 to maybe $1.1, which is where I want to start longing, right? Let's just assume that my stop loss is at like 0.8. And just for the sake of it, let's put up take profit at like maybe 1.5. Okay, so in this case, you're longing around $1, right? Your risk is 20 cents and your reward is 50 cents. Risk reward ratio is about 2.5. Okay, so if I have this range, right? Take notice that from 1.1 down to the stop loss is 40 cents, and then to the take profit is 40 cents. So my first entry here is where I have the highest chance of front running the market, because if this is where my technical is showing a sign of reversal or continuation, and I identify it before everyone else, I'm going to get a really good entry, right? So sometimes you get a wick down to exactly 1.1 and then it bounce up. It never give you too much time in the range. If you're in and you make the profit, right? But in this case, my first entry, which is like the beginning of the zone, that's where my risk reward is actually the worst. But if I enter at 0.9, if the market give me that last entry, my stop loss is only 0.1 and my take profit is 0.6, right? So the risk reward at the lower entry is always higher. So in this case, when I'm scaling into a range, I always go from the smallest to the biggest. And then it's up to you to decide, right? How much you want to go in. But for a rule of thumb, I normally never enter. So this first one, I normally never enter more than 30% of my total trade size, not total portfolio. So let's say I want to risk maximum $10, then I'm only using 30% of that in the first trade, right? If it catches that and it run right away, I'm okay with a small win. If it give me a better entry and lower, I can add more and get a better average. And eventually, when it go down to the lowest one, I'll add the heaviest, right? So that's into like the risk reward. In my opinion, I would not enter a trade if my risk reward is not at least 1.5, at least. And to me, that is still not like a really good risk reward. 1.5 is, to me, is like the average. If your risk reward is under 1.5, is really not a good trade, right? Second thing for us to think about is probability. And for you to determine probability, there's a couple of things that can help, which come from pattern. For example, a falling wedge have like 80% chance of pumping, but a 20% chance of it like just go straight down the toilet, right? Or like a rising wedge, most of the time people think, oh, it's a rising wedge, it's going to go down, but the chance of it going down is only 80%. The other 20% is it go parabolic from there, right? So you got to think about your probability as well, which to me actually end up changing the risk reward a little bit. So let's say the same example, right? Let's say I'm remove this whole range and I only have one entry at 1.1. Technically, if we only look at the stop loss and take profit, right? we think that this is a really bad risk reward because your stop loss is about like 0.3, your take profit is about 0.4, right? You barely at like 1.3, you're not even at 1.5. This is really bad. But let's say I go long here on a falling wedge. My stop loss is at 0.8, right? So stop loss is minus 30 cents. But the chance of it happening, the chance of this happening is only 20%, right? So you multiply by 0.2 and you get your expected value for stop loss is about 0.06, right? It's only 20% of that 30. If my take profit is at 1.5, it's positive 1.5, right? But the falling wedge, the chance of it pumping is about 80%. So I take this, multiply by 0.8, which is about $1.20. So in this case, I would enter, even though my stop loss and my take profit is the same, but the chance of me winning this one is a lot higher. As you can see, the risk reward here is about 1 to 20, right? And these are the trades that personally, even though the stop loss and the take profit is about the same, I would still take. So this is something to think about because a lot of time people just see like, oh, where's the stop loss? Where's the take profit? Oh, the stop loss is too heavy. I'm not going to take this trade, right? And then actually from that example, I want to give you another note about psychological flaw is that when people are winning big, they get addicted. They start trading irresponsibly. They start losing. When their account is down, they get into a state of paralysis. And then they can't make any decision. And they think, well, market is choppy. I'm not going to jump in, right? I lost this trade. I'm not going to go in anymore. But to me, I'm going to give you an example, right? Two traders. Trader A is someone who don't take any decision because for whatever reason, market is choppy or directions unclear, Russia and Ukraine is fighting, blah, 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 whatever reason, right? They don't make any decision. Trader B take about 4 trades. One of them is a win with a really good risk reward ratio. 3 of them are a loss. So he ended up breaking even. Even though the result is exactly the same, over a long term, if you have to bet on someone's success, who would you choose? Obviously, the second one, right? So the result doesn't really reflect, like the short-term result, it doesn't reflect your performance. And most of the time, if you're stuck in a state of inaction, you're missing out on a lot of opportunity and you definitely don't grow. So taking shots at these things, right? It's really, really important. What we're trying to do here is how do we make a smarter choice and how do we intelligently enter these trades. So that's my second thing in a trade is the entry, right? From the entry, I want to talk about the next thing, which is my stop loss, right? Most of us here are doing leverage trading. So there's a couple of things to think about. My level of stop loss, for me, the stop loss has 2 types, right? I have an absolute stop loss, which is where the whole structure breaks down. It doesn't make sense for things to get back to that level and for my thesis to still be right. Like if I'm longing, I'm obviously bullish, but I'm like, if price get back to this level, it might not stay bullish. That's where my stop loss should be. That's the absolute stop loss, right? You have to respect that level. If you get past that level, you got to take an action. You got to be able to flip or get out of that trade at a loss. My second stop loss is also where it depends on your leverage, right? A lot of people want to go heavy on the leverage because they think oh, there's a high success here. Or if you follow some of my signal and we have, a winning streak, you're like, well, his success rate seems to be really high. You go on a high leverage trade, you make some money, and then next one you do it, you lose half of your profile, right? So having that absolute stop loss will help me determine my leverage. So let's say in this case, right, I enter at 1, and then my stop loss is 30 cents, which is about 1/4 of this trade. So the maximum you can go, it's maybe about like 23, 25x. You cannot go further than that because it could liquidate you before it gets to the stop loss. Also take note in your exchange that in stop loss, you have 2 types. You have like mark price And then you have your last price. Right? The mark price is actually the average of all the exchanges. Like you have FTX, Huobi, Binance, all these crazy exchanges for crypto. And it takes like an average of the price at the time, and that's like the mark price. But the last price is specifically to your exchange. So let's say I'm using Binance. One of the things I normally want to do is my stop loss, I'll always set at mark price. Because as we know, Binance is one of the most volatile. During capitulation or crazy pump, like our wick is always longer than other exchanges, right? And I want to be able to take into account those. For example, one of our trade recently, we wick through it and I didn't hit my stop loss, right? Simply because that week only happened on Binance and it didn't happen on other exchanges. So when it balances out, I'm still good, you know? And when I do a take profit, I normally do the last price for the opposite reason. Because on Binance, as soon as it gets to my target, I want to be able to take profit. Just in case that is a week as well. If it weak all the way up there, but the other exchange didn't get to that level, I want to be able to take the profit right before the holding reverse. So that's one really small thing to take into account. And also, one of the most important thing for me to remember in terms of setting stop loss, we enter a trade based on a condition. Your stop loss should be whatever that invalidate that condition. So for example, a couple of weeks ago, I shared with you guys that I'm shorting ETH at around like 3,100, 3,200, right? And I'm expecting that it should go at least down to 2,600, maybe even 1,800, right? At that time, a lot of people think I was crazy. But I mean, today we're trading around 2,600, right? And people still ask me in the Discord, like, is your theory still valid? Like, are you still expecting, capitulation? And my answer is, it's still in play. I don't know. It hasn't been invalidated, right? So the structure is still going down, but every time I see a reversal, I gotta be smart and think, okay, my condition is bearish, right? How bearish it can be. These bounces, right? Like when ETH bounced up a couple of days ago, go up to like, yesterday go up to like 2,700, right? Almost 2,800. Does that invalidate my short from 3,100? So far, it doesn't, right? And if my condition is it could bounce as high as 3,500 before it fall down to 1,800, then even if it gets to 34, 3,500, I should still be holding my 3,200 short. I would not set stop loss simply because, oh, I was in the green, I'm going to set a stop loss, right? That's not the way to go, because you're going to end up taking profit before you get to the target. And that really mess up your risk reward. So think of the same example, right? We're trying to go long from 1.1, stop loss at 0.8, take profit at 1.5, right? But let's say you get to 1.3 and you're like, okay, I'm already in the green, I'm happy, I'm gonna cut it short here, money is money, right? Sounds logical, you're gonna put some money away. But what's your reason for making that decision? Is there a new condition that appeared that make you want to take that profit? Are you taking profit because there's a probability of the market reversing now? If so, then that is a good decision, because you're protecting your money and you're going with the odds and you're respecting the market. But if you're taking that profit simply because, oh, I'm in the green, I want to take some money, then that action actually make your risk reward reduce a lot. Because just like I said, from 1.1 to 0.8 is 30 cents. So if you take profit at like 1.3, your reward is only 20 cents. So in this case, even though you're entering a trade that's really good, your risk reward now is only 0.6, which is absolutely terrible, right? Risk reward of 1, where the risk and reward is the same, is just like flipping a coin. You either get head or tail, that's it. 0.6 is worse than that. So key thing for me to remember with stop loss is stop loss is where your condition is invalidated, right? And just to extend on that, every action you take with the position, whether you add more to it, when you shave some off, there gotta be a new condition. Something new show up, some new data that changes your thesis. Otherwise, if you're just making it based on your feeling, because like, oh, it's so much in the red, I don't want to take this much. That's simply because you are overexposed. Your trade might still be good, right? And then take profit level. Take profit level, this is where technical analysis or price action analysis can come in and help, right? Next thing I want to talk about is compounding. So a lot of people want to, I mean, we're all here with trading because we want to make money, right? But there's a big misconception between trying to make money and trying to make money quick. And even when people I talk to that are really patient, they're like, yeah, I'm patient. I'm not trying to double up in a week. I'm okay with a 2x by the end of the season. But to me, that is still, if you're putting a deadline on when your profile is going to get to a certain point, you are, in a way, you are very impatient. To me, if we are like under 40, under 50, we're still super young. There's so much time, and the market always moves. If you understand the market, you go with it. You can long, you can short, you can take all these trades. It will compound up, right? And the funny thing is, from my personal experience, when I try to double up really quickly, I cannot. I could not even get like a 40% or 50% gain. But when I really don't think about like a deadline, and I'm just like, okay, I'm just gonna do exactly what I know I should do. Just follow the rule, respect all my set of rule that I created for myself, and I just go with it. I'm surprised, right? Like sometimes I get like a 2x in just like a couple of days, and sometimes it's slower. But on those days, I'm like, yeah, there's really no stress on the timeline. So really important thing, I think you should remove that deadline, especially with crypto. I think a lot of people have that expectation that it's going to be the same as the other cycle. Everybody thinks that, hey, it's correcting, out season is going to come. Bitcoin is going to do that capitulation, and then on the run back up, on the retrace before the bear market start, altcoin is going to, 5x, 10x, 100x, right? Everybody's waiting for that. And that's the whole reason why you hold from 64K all the way down to 29K, all the way up to 69. And then now it's a 30 something, and we're still holding it, right? But if you remove the timeline, you realize that, hey, why is it that you got to make money this cycle? You can make money the next cycle, right? And if you understand the market, why is it that you can't trade during the bear market, especially in the beginning where it's fully trending down and every bounce is really strong? And when you short that rip instead of buying the dip, right? Bear market of shorting the rip. When you short those rip, it's a lot of profit because every bounce up is really strong. I'm going to explain more about like where those levels go. Why is it that we create new all-time high? Why does it like we break structure when we go down? I'm going to explain that a little bit more. So yeah, removing that expectation of a deadline for yourself, right? Why is it that it has to be this cycle? And why is it that it has to be crypto? I agree that crypto is the most volatile. It can bring the most profit. But why is it that we all have a deadline, right? Removing that will give you so much like mental freedom to be able to actually perform well. So that brings me to compound interest, right? With crypto, when I tell someone the first time, I said I'm okay with 2% gain a day, and even for me, that is a big like blessing. Some people were laughing at me. They're like, "No, I do like 20x trade, and I only use like 5% of my profile per trade, and over like a week or 2 weeks, I double up, triple up really quick." But the same people lost a lot of money when the thesis didn't play out, right? For me, 2% a day is huge, because if you compound that 2% up over a year, you do a 1300x. If you just on the computer just do or calculator just do 1.02 to the power of 365, right? That's 2% a day compounding up. That actually equal to about like 1300x, which means if you start with $1, you're gonna have about like 1.3 thousand after a year, and after 2 years you should be holding about like 1.7 million, something like that, right? So the question again go down to removing that deadline. Are you okay with small gain that compound up? Are you okay with being disciplined for 2 years to get like a million X. If you're okay with that, then that's fine. And that's with 2%. So if you go with, a smaller number, like I'm okay with 0.3 or 0.5% a day, you'll be surprised how fast it compound up. And one day when you look back at your profile, you'll be like, wow, I've already got this far. My trade size is gone so big and I didn't even realize that it got bigger. So next thing that brings me to trade size, right? And this go into our risk management. So I'm just going to give an example that our profile, let's say we start with $1,000, right? Your risk reward is always in your favor. That means if you only enter trade with good risk reward and good analysis, over the long term, it's really hard to lose. It's really hard to lose, right? But the thing is, a lot of people think that, hey, the first trade I double up, the next trade I lost half of my profile. That's breaking even. But really in a trade, that's not the same thing, right? Especially if you go all in all the time. Because from $1,000, right? Let's say you double up, you go to, not double up and divide by 2. Let's say you win 50% and then you lose 50%, right? Let's think into a percentage. So if you win 50%, your profile go to 1,500, right? But the next trade, you lose about 50%. You go down to 750. So it's just multiplication, right? If you add a certain percentage and you subtract that same percentage after, you actually end up taking away more. So in this case, for the risk and reward to be the same, your trade size should always be the same for every trade. Meaning if I long ETH, for example, and I have about like 8 different entries, all of those 8 entries should add up to just one trade size that I'm taking on like a single long. Let's say we're longing like VET right now, right? Small leverage, 3x, we either go to our stop loss or we're gonna multiply a lot of money, right? So all of those longs should only add up to that trade. That's the only way for me to guarantee that my win can cover all my losses. If I cannot cover that, then I should not be trading. So your trade size needs to be consistent. So how much trade size should you go in, especially with something volatile like crypto, right? I think this is very subjective, because if your win rate is high and your risk reward is really good, then you can afford to risk a little bit more because the chance of you losing is less. But personally for me, and take these numbers, you guys can adjust it to whatever that fits to you. I think my number one rule for trade size is that if you see it being red or near stop loss, and you get that feeling of like, oh, this is not okay, and you get that temptation of wanting to DCA, or you get that temptation of wanting to cut it early, then I think you are overexposed. That's all. That's my number one rule for trade size. So trying to feel how much you can stomach, and that should be the number one cap. You should never go past that, because if a loss trade can create uncomfort for you, it's going to hinder all your performances. Personally, for me, I do about 90% for spot, and I only use about 10% for my future trading, right? And maximum for me is 5 to 8% of my future per position. For me, anything over anything 5x, I use maximum 8% for the entire position. Meaning, if I DCA, I only use up to that 5%, right? And anything over like 8x, I'm using maximum like 5%. Sorry, 3x, I'm using 8%. 5x, I'm using 5%. Anything over 5x, I'm using less, probably 2 or 3% of my portfolio, right? And this is out of my future portfolio. So you're gonna have to divide that by 10 to see your entire portfolio, right? This for me just work with my personal analysis and also my pain tolerance, because it's really not that high. If you want to go higher, that's totally up to you. All right. So that's trade size, right? Now, when we talk about compounding and trade size, there's two ways to risk manage. There's one by like dollar value. So let's say you start with 1,000 and you're like, I want to risk no more than 3% risk per trade, right? That means that you can lose maximum $30 a trade. If you set a stop loss where it should be, and you see that the red number that is shown on Binance, if you see that being greater than $30, you're overexposed. And then so that's by dollar, $30 a trade, right? This is really easy to manage, but it's slower for you to compound up because you always think in terms of like, oh, how much am I risking, right? So let's say you go to about like $2,000, right? And you still follow the same old rule, then you make a consistent amount of money, but it doesn't compound. But if you change this to $60, right? If you get to $2,000 to double up, and then you trade maximum $60 per trade, that's your maximum risk when you hit the stop loss. Then let's say you go on a streak of like, 20 bad trade. You lose like $1,200. Now you might have $800, right? Do you still go with $60? Because now it violates your risk. It really violates your risk now. If you go 3%, you should risk no more than $24, right? But if you go down to 800 and you're taking smaller trade, it's gonna take slower for you to get back to 1,000 or get back to 2,000 or get past that, right? The second one is risking in terms of percentage. So you don't care what your total value is, you only look at percent. If you risk maximum 3%, that's going to change, right? The first trade is going to be a little bit, it's going to be a fixed number. If that's a win, the next trade it's going to be a little bit bigger. If that's a loss, the next trade is going to be a little bit smaller. I like to use something called dynamic risk management. So let me give you an example. Let's say I have $1,000, right? And my goal is to get to $10,000. I want to do a 10x. I don't know over how long, but my checkpoint is $10,000. I'm going to create a bunch of different checkpoints. So let's say my first checkpoint is the range from $800 to $1,200. I could lose a little bit up to $800, or I could win up to $1,200. I'm still going to use the same risk. Let's just say that I use 5%, right? So my first 1,000 is in this bracket. I'm using 5% of that 1,000. So every trade, when my profile is from 800 to 1,200, I'm risking maximum $50, right? This is the 5% risk. Now let's say I get past 1,200, right? I get to 1,300. Now I put myself in a new bracket. So I treat the 1,200 as like a checkpoint, kind of. By that checkpoint, I'm gonna change my risk management a little bit. So now my next range, let's say another $400, right? So from 1,300 to maybe 1,700. Within this range, what I do is I actually reduce the risk a little bit. Let's say I only go with 4%, right? So I get to 1,300. I trade with 4% of the 1,300. So now my risk is about 52. So I'm reducing the percentage when I perform better, but the trade size is actually end up being bigger than the old trade. This way I still compound up, but my risk is within my, pain tolerance, right? And in fact, it's actually better because before you're risking 5%, now you're risking only 4%. And you can imagine if you get to, $1 million, you could go to like 0.001% per trade, right? And that would still end up compounding up quicker than just being reckless. So for me, thinking this way, I can divide my profile and I can be dynamic about it. I can change my risk when I'm performing well. I can reduce the risk and still make more money. And knowing that's how it works, it relieves a lot of like stress for me. And if I see a stop loss, it's just a stop loss. If I need to cut the trade, I cut the trade. And this helps so much with discipline. So that kind of go back to the first question that we have, right? About like psychological and how do I manage the stop loss and all that. Right? So I don't meddle with stop loss unless it really show me like, okay, this is the level. All right. And then of course, like leverage. I think if we leverage trade, we know. So if your stop loss is a certain amount away, you see how many percent that is, and you divide that into 100%, and that's your maximum leverage, right? If you can manage 20% down all the way to your stop loss, you should not enter with more than a 4x or 5x leverage. Now that brings me to my next point. When I have a stop loss, I normally don't like to actually set a stop loss on the exchange. I know this is what a lot of people do, but that's how all this wick happen. Because if you place an order in the order book, that create liquidity, and the market will always look for liquidity, right? The way it works is, let's say you're going long, same example here, right? We're going long with entry of 1.1, our stop loss is at 0.8, right? If our entire group, everybody in here, let's say we get rich and we all become millionaire and we all enter with a big trade size, we all trade the same, we all set a stop loss at 0.8, right? So the moment the price get past 0.8, there's going to be a lot of sell order. So what the whales can simply do is create a bunch of buy order limit at maybe like 0.79, something simple like this. They create a bunch of buy order here, right? And then they actually end up being the ones selling, pushing the price way past 0.8. The moment we get past 0.8, all of our stop loss trigger, we're going to sell right into this order, and then they can create market order to push the price back up. So that's how all these wick happen. And I normally don't like to set a stop loss for that specific reason. So what I personally do is, when my stop loss level is, I use a little bit less leverage than I should, so that if it wick past it a little bit, it doesn't get liquidated. And then also I set an alert at that level. So I will draw a line and go in trading view, I set an alert, and if price get there, it will let me know right away. I can look at the reaction at the level. If it actually look like it's breaking that structure, which I'll explain from price action analysis. If we actually look at that and we see that, then from there I cut the trade, right? But if it get there and I see a strong like buyback, or get to a certain level when I'm shorting it, I see a strong sell-off, I wouldn't be cutting that trade. I would just set my alert again for it when it get back to that level. Or I take the high of that most recent week for the short, or the low of the most recent week for the long, and that's where my absolute stop loss is. So if it wick through my level and it bounce up, then that's where my actual stop loss is. Because the chance of this happening twice, of the manipulation happening twice at the same level, is almost zero, right? In this case, if it wick through your stop loss and it go back down there again, it's really high chance that it would go even past that. So it makes sense that that's where we should cut. I hope that makes sense, right? Are we good so far? Are we good so far?
Yeah, we're good, man. This is
Cool.
great.
Do you have any guidance for choosing appropriate leverage that we could apply to all scenario? For me, it depends on whether you're scalping or you swinging. If I'm doing a swing trade, I should be able to hold it for a long time, right? So I never use more than like a 3x or maximum 5x leverage. This gives me the ability to be able to weather the volatility. But more importantly, for a swing trade, I'm holding it for a long time. Sometimes there's certain position, I remember especially since summer of 2021, around 29.5 or 29.8K, I did a BTC long, and I hold that long all the way up until almost the top. And I only did like a 3x. And because I do a small leverage, I can hold it for longer, because over time, we're still paying the funding fee, right? I think you guys are aware of funding fee. If there's more long than shorts, then every 8 hours, whoever's longing is gonna have to pay the fee to the shorts, right? If there's more shorts, then whoever longing is gonna take the money from the shorts. So the way it works is, let's say I put in like a $50 position, right? And I use a 5x, which means they're holding my $50 as deposit, as collateral, and they lending it to me, 250 bucks. So that funding fee is going to be on that 250 bucks. Now, if you do like let's say 20x leverage, right? The same position, 50 bucks, People are like, you caught the bottom. Why don't you do a 20x? That's going to be so rich, right? But I don't know when BTC is going to get to the top. What if it become a super cycle, like everyone said, it lasts for a year, right? What if it actually get to 100,000? I won't be able to hold my 20x because eventually I don't even have enough to pay funding fee. So before I take profit, I actually end up having to put more money into the position, and I'm not trying to do that. So for me, on the longer trade, if you think that this is going to take a long time to play out, I do small leverage. So in the Discord, when sometimes I tell you guys, like for example with VET, right? We only do like a 3x. We do a 3x long on VET. That's because I'm okay with holding that for like a month. I'm okay with that position holding for a full month. Small leverage, right? Sometimes it's a scalp trade. Like I think about a week ago or like just a couple of days ago, you guys see I was like on a streak. Every day was like just scalping, right? And I share a lot of signal. We're flipping long short all the time, and we're making so much money doing those. I do small position and high leverage because the chance of that position lasting over 8 hours is not very long. So I'm probably going to enter and I'm going to cut it before the deadline for the funding fee get paid, right? So in this case, you want to risk a little bit of money, but still be able to make the same profit. So my rule of thumb is scalp trade, use higher leverage, smaller capital. Swing trade, you increase your capital and you decrease your leverage. Your profit is going to be exactly the same, right? If you do 10x with $100 and 20x with $50, or like a 3x with like $670, it's going to be the same. It's going to be the same because your trade size, your collateral, you're going to borrow about $2,000, right? It's all about the same. So yeah, that's the rule of thumb on leverage and all scenario. Also, I would, when you look at your trade, because a lot of us enter a trade and you have this, this urgency to just look at your phone and see how well the position is performing. A lot of us do that, right? I would highly recommend you to not look at the number. If it shows that you are like, let's say minus $10, I would not even look at $10 because $10 might be small to somebody and might be big to somebody, right? I look at the percentage next to it. If it shows that, okay, you're down 5%, but my leverage is X5, right? Then I'm like, okay, it's only 1% off from the entry. Does that make sense? It's only 1% off. And we know that 1% with crypto is nothing. It happened like in a few minutes. It's very easy. So knowing that, I would not be anxious about like, oh, should I cut? Should I DCA? Did I take the wrong trade? I would never go into self-doubt, right? And I will only look at that percentage. Even if I see like minus 40%, but my leverage is 20x and my stop loss is set the right way, then I'm like, that's okay if it hit the stop loss, because I know 40% on a 20x leverage is only 2% off from the original price, right? And it bounced 2% easily, especially with like low cap. So looking at percentage, I see everything as percentage, and I only use the dollar value for the checkpoint in my portfolio. How do you define the percentage chances? Okay, cool. This is where I get into the technical analysis, right? So I'm gonna get a little bit into the technical now. Actually, sorry, earlier someone wanted to ask me a question.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you a question, just like about your habit of basically getting this all down before you enter a trade. So do you have like an Excel spreadsheet where you're kind of tracking this, and how do you balance like missing an opportunity to actually figuring out what the risk to reward ratio is and everything before you do that?
Cool. So I actually used to journal my trade a lot, and I think it really helped. And I don't do it as much anymore, but I journal heavily when I'm on a losing streak. Because for me, writing it down really helped me with the progress. I do have an Excel sheet for day-to-day performance. So I look at how much did I win this day, what's my average like percentage gain of the day, how much money did I make today, what's the cumulative from day one all the way till now. I also have like an average for my daily percentage. that compound up. So I look at that and I'm like, okay, am I underperforming my average today or am I overperforming, right? When I see those numbers, like let's say yesterday was a really big win for me. Yesterday I nailed some crazy shorts, and for those yesterday, I don't know how, but by the end of it, I look at it, I win about 30% of my future profile, right? But when I look at my average winning of the day, it was only 11% day to day. That's my average that I'm compounding up. So when I look at that, I'm like, okay, I should not even be excited about today, because today is just one of those extra bonus day. It's just extra green, right? But if I'm in the green and I see 5% win, a lot of people will walk away thinking, okay, I make some money, I make 5% today, that's great, right? But I look at it and I would think that, okay, there might be something about me that make me not perform as well. So I would slow down, I would try to be more calm, I would spend more time with my friends, I would go for a walk, do things that are, healthy, make my mind totally clear, get a really good sleep, things like that. But if I'm just, on the same average all the time, then I know this is consistency and that's the right way I should be. Sometimes on a big winning day and I win really big, I would even take a break. This sounds really backward, right? A lot of people take a break when they're on a losing streak. When I'm on a losing streak, I just make sure that my daily routine is healthy. When I'm on a win, like a big win day, I would take a break. Sometimes I would take a break for like 3 days, 5 days, because I want that, excitement, all that chemical in my body. I want it to be released. I want to get back to zero before I go back into here. I don't want to bring my emotion into trading because we know that that's our biggest flaw. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. And yeah, I've been there before where you think you're a genius and then you keep trading when you shouldn't.
Yeah, man, we all been there. Also for me, I find that having a healthy daily routine is super, super important. My routine when I wake up, when I first wake up, I don't ever look at the chart. When I sleep, I'm away from all electronics. So all my phone, computers, everything is in a different room. It's charging in that room. There's no electronic in my bedroom. I want to have like, the best sleep I can. I meditate before sleep. I don't know if you guys into meditation, but it would help tremendously. And the first thing I wake up is, I do a couple breathing exercise just to get my body warm up. I water the plant in my house because for me that's just very like therapeutic. I do some yoga. I do like a quick like 10 to 15-minute meditation just to clear my mind. And I work out a little bit just to work on the little muscle that I don't use all the time, especially for us. If you're trading a lot, you're going to be sitting a lot. So I take care of those muscles so that I don't get back pain, or when I sit down for hours and I stand up, my knee doesn't hurt. I do those things, and then I hop into a cold shower. And then after all of that, I make myself a coffee. I go to the balcony to have a smoke. Sorry, I'm a smoker. I don't know if I smoke. And then after that, that's when I get up and go for breakfast. And I don't actually start trading until later. So from the time I wake up, there's at least 2 to 3 hours of me doing things that I think is healthy for me. And then I start going into trading. And over time, it helps a lot. So that's
do you try and avoid?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Do you try and avoid having like alerts or trades open when you're asleep, for example?
When I go to sleep, if it's a swing trade, I have to sleep through it, right? Because if I'm holding a trade for months, then I should be able to sleep through it. I'm not gonna stay up for like 1,600 hours, right? But if it's a stop trade or something higher leverage, then I tend to either cut it in profit or just really like let the stop loss be. What I would do is toward the end of the day when I know I'm going to sleep soon, then I would start to reduce my trade size a lot. So
right.
In the middle of the day when I'm most intense with my trading, then I go up to the exact size, right? But toward the end, I know that, okay, I don't know how long it's going to drag out. The trade might play out at like 3 a.m. my time when I'm sleeping, right? Then I use smaller money. A lot of time, you'll be surprised, a lot of time I wake up and my trade hit stop loss and then go up, right? But because I was sleeping, I had to trade the stop loss. But by reducing the size, I realized that after hitting the stop loss, my day to day, I'm still in profit, because by the end of it, I'm only taking stabs. I'm using part of that daily profit to do those low trade, or I skip the trade entirely. I also remember you have a question about how do I manage like missing opportunity, right? This market, it hunts for liquidity, and I think that's a really interesting word. Liquidity is a flow of money, just kind of like water in a waterfall, right? So when I think of it that way, I have this really interesting analogy. I think that I'm like living in, you know, a primitive town, you know, in the middle of the jungle, and there's a waterfall where everybody go there to drink. That's the way I see it. The waterfall is the market, it's the liquidity. Everybody go there when they are thirsty. In this case, want to make some money, right? But the waterfall is always there. The market is always there. If I'm missing opportunity, I really don't care, right? Just because I can drink water doesn't mean I drink like 20 liters of water a day. Doesn't mean that I drink all the time. I should do just to where I think is enough, right? Too much of anything is bad. So, I mean, don't even think about missing opportunity. Even if you wake up, you see in Discord, there's a call, just forget about it. Just think of that same analogy. It's like, okay, you woke up in the jungle, some of your friends went to drink. That's fine, right? The next time they go to drink, if you're thirsty, you can go with them. That's the way I see it. So it's the liquidity, the market is always there. And there's always enough like money from people who make bad choice. I don't want to call it dumb money, because I don't think anyone is dumb. I just think that it's different and people don't understand how this works, right? So, I mean, look at crypto market, right? There's over like 10,000 coins. Those are like the listed on CoinGecko. Not to include like all the other projects that haven't been listed yet. Like, there's always missing opportunity. If you focus on whatever you focus on, you see. So if you focus on missing opportunity, you always have FOMO. If you focus on profit, you only see profit. And then you won't be able to see the other side of the argument, which is where you're risking, right? And if you only focusing on the risk because you're on the losing streak, then you're going to be worried about how much you're losing. And you might get one really good opportunity, but because you're scared, you don't put in enough money and it doesn't make up for the other trade. So I don't think about what I'm missing. It's you only have like here and now. I know it sounds cliche, but it's just here and now. If you see something that you didn't participate in, that's fine, right? And I also think money is an energy. If I miss a trade and my friend took the trade and they make some money, I just celebrate it, right? I'm just happy because they make money. I love money. So if someone make money and the energy of getting money is something I celebrate. So I celebrate that for everyone. That really helped me with the FOMO. I'm not sure if it helped you a little bit.
That's great, thanks.
But yeah, cool. So we're about halfway in. I think I have covered pretty much most of the, you know, the non-technical, the non-like trading things, right? Let me just go over this. Oh, actually a little bit more on, I totally forgot about how the market works. Okay, so when you open Binance on your future, you see, you know, on the left, there's like all these like table of like all the red of the sell order and all the green, right? For me, all the red and all the green are the limit order. So the market work kind of like an auction. Everybody yell out a price. Hey, I have ETH. I want to sell it at 2,600. Hey, I want to buy ETH at 2,590, right? If two people can't meet, then there's no trade. So a lot of time people say like, oh, buyers are coming in. I think that's not the correct way to say it, because for every buy, somebody is selling. So technically, there's always equal amount of buyer and seller. Limit order is like saying, this is the absolute price I want to buy or sell. I will never go past that price. I'm meeting you exactly at this price, right? So let's say, how much is ETH right now? Let's open this trade, right? So about 2,600. So let's say someone want to sell ETH at $5 higher, 26.56, right? 65, right? and someone want to buy it $5 lower. If those are the only two order, there will be no trade and market won't move, right? Like right now, as we see, prices kind of stuck at like 2,598. That's because there's no one buying from the order book and no one selling into the order book. Does that make sense? So that brings me to the next thing. When you enter a long or a short, I would highly avoid going with market price, because you don't know how much it moves. If you want to buy, let's say like 10 ETH, and you see that the price is like 2,598, you're like, okay, this is great, but this is the last price. If there's no order here and the next order, if let's say this is like a really low cap market, the next order is all the way here. You think you're buying at this last price, but the last price already happened. You actually end up buying at the next order, which is normally higher than the price, right? Because if it was lower, it would have been bought already. Next thing is looking at your trade size. If you go for a market order, so the way it is if you place a limit order, your transaction fee is a lot lower. I think you guys might have noticed this already. When let's say I close a trade with market order, transaction fee is huge, right? I lock in $50 profit, but the Binance take like maybe $10, $12 off of the trade. But when I do a limit order, I realize that fee is only about like 10%. So how it works is when you place a market order, especially for big size, I don't know how big everyone is trading, but assuming that we do it right and we compound it up, eventually we'll all get to a point where we start trading big, right? If you trade bigger and you place a big order, you end up buying every single limit order until it fills. So let's say I place a limit order right here at the market price, right? But the orders are all the way up here. These are the orders that I see in the book, right? So when I click on limit and I put, oh, I want to buy 10 ETH, what it does is it's going to fill all of this up, right? Let's say each of this have like, 2.5 ETH that add up to, $10. Then I'm actually paying the taker fee about 4 times. It's a little bit cheaper if just one guy selling all 10 ETH. If there's only one order here and I buy 10 from him and he's selling 10 ETH or more, then I'm only filling one order and it's actually cheaper for me. So this is why when you do market order, your fee changes all the time because it depends on the amount, right? And the more order that you're taking up, the more you'll pay. So limit order is always better. And this is also why I do my take profit level when I close with limit. I always have to do it a little bit before my actual target. Just in case that, let's say, I want to sell like 20 ETH here. If you get there, it only feel like 3 and then it reverses, but I'm sleeping, right? I could have taken profit, right? Sometimes, and that also brings me to the risk reward. When you have a certain risk reward, but your stop loss is a little bit under where the level is, and your take profit is also a little bit under, then your risk reward get a little bit worse. So aim for really good risk reward when you look at a certain trade, preferably that it can cover those low like wiggle room for yourself, right? So that goes into order. The only thing that moved the price is the market order, right? Like right now it's 2,600, so it jumped about like $2, almost $3 since we started talking about this example. That means that somebody placed all these order all the way up into 2,600. This last price means people have been buying those orders. So the sell order book is being thinned out at this level, right? And then if it go down to like 2,400, that means people have been selling that. And so only the market order can move the price. That's why, and when you in analyzing the order book, there's something called delta. Delta is the amount of market order minus the amount of limit order. And market order is usually from people who don't know how to trade. Only occasionally is from institutional buy. Sometimes you see it go down to exact level and it bounce up really hard. That's because they open a market order at that place. They want to buy it up, but not just buying it up, they want to buy it up quickly. They want to bounce and they want to make sure that everybody who missed that have to have a certain type of FOMO, right? So most of the time, market order is just bad and it creates these imbalances. And from the order book, you can really see where the imbalances are. And sometimes you just have to trade against that imbalance. Like, okay, price barely move, but the delta is really high, which means so many people are buying with market order, but there's limit order that hold that price and it doesn't move. So that limit order, that sell order is probably pretty high in volume, right? And that create like a ceiling where the price cannot get past. So price can stay in one spot, volume could be really high, but there's something called absorption. The money coming in is being absorbed, it doesn't move the price, right? And you can trade these, like if someone is interested in trading with order book, I really recommend going into Excel. Let me show you guys. You don't have to have these open all the time, but you can really see like where the orders are, right? Like I can look to see how much people are buying, how much people are selling. Like over here, I can see that, you know, the delta, for example, over here is only minus 4.2 million. So most orders are pretty smart. That means if I'm looking at this candle, the technical is stronger. Sometimes you see a really big candle, but if the info inside that candle is just hollow and it doesn't make sense, then those are actually a trap, right? But I mean, this is more advanced, but you really don't need the order book in terms of like trading right. This is an edge. You can use this as an edge. Excel charts, you can see charts from, you know, couple like BitMEX, Bybit, OKX, FTX, and Binance future for, you know, only the pair that they're trading. It show you the order book and all that. But I believe that Excel chart is a subscription. I think it's about like $600 a month. So it is heavy. And in my opinion, you really don't need it unless you're trading on a huge size or you're trying to guess where the probability of the reversal are. And I mean, on the Discord, I give you guys some of these information based on this as well. So it's not really a big deal, right? But in terms of order, it's very important for you to understand the difference between limit and market order. So now let's go into one of my trick that I normally do. If let's say I'm longing, right? Just randomly like this. And of course, it's my last take profit level. And I have, let's say, a few different take profit level, 3 of them, right? If this is my main one, right? And it's at a level where it shouldn't be like the top or the bottom, but it's the level where there's most liquidity. I actually close take profit here with market order. So I would just do like, you know, a trigger, like when price get here, automatically sell that much. Because if I'm longing and I close it, the market is going to read it as a short. If I'm closing along here or technically selling, if I'm selling market price at this level and it's the level with the most liquidity, it's going to create an imbalance, very small. People are going to look at it, and if someone is looking at the order book, they're going to be like, okay, this level has liquidity, price don't move, but somebody just sell, right? Then if they were to trap that, they would want to move the price to the next level. So on these lower target, when I close with market, it actually increased the probability of reaching the next target slightly. None of us have enough power to move the entire market, but it's like butterfly effect, right? Little bit, it add up, and then sometimes it go in the same direction. So it helps you out into a probability just a little bit. But with my last order, if this is where it is, I normally would put it here. Or in this whole range, I would put like 10 different orders. I would spread it out. Does that make sense? Okay, so now let's go into what else? What else am I missing? What's my note? Yeah, so we talked about limit order, market order, and how it affects the price. Okay, so now I want to talk about price action and technical. PA and TA is very different. The way I compare it is like TA is like astrology, and PA is like an astronaut. So PA is like a study, the theory of it, but the price action is actually how the TA come up with that thing. When you look at the price action, you really understand. Oh, I see why they call this the falling wedge or the rising wedge. I see why this level should happen. So I'm going to give you guys a bunch of different price action analysis basic, and that will really help you with understanding how it works, right? So the way I see it with the market, here I'm just on a daily chart, right? And I think it's really easy for us to see that, okay, we have a swing high here, right? We have a big capitulation down here, kind of go sideways this way, and then it go into like a trending market up to here, right? If I were to hide the chart, this is pretty much what, if you open the line chart, it will look something like this, right? You notice that all of these places, those are the swing high and the swing low. This is where the price move really slow. In the middle is where it moved really fast, right? So right here, it moved really fast down, right? This is a little bit choppy, but you can see that this area, the speed is slowed down a whole lot. And then this speed pick up. So it's like back in physics in like grade 6 or 7, I think. Actually, for some people, it's like grade 10 or 12 if you live in like North America. Is that whole like a swing of the pendulum. So if I have like, you know, something like this, right? And over here, I'm hanging like a ball, you know? And you know that whole physics question, when you raise the ball up to here and then you let go and it just swing down, right? And it just swing this way. Back from physics, we know that when you hold it here, there's no speed, there's no movement, right? So the velocity is 0. The market is really slow, right? But when you let go, but it store a lot of potential energy. So the next move will be big. You just don't know in which direction, right? When you let go, market pick a direction, it's going to move, it's going to swing down really fast. And where do you think that is the fastest? Down here, right? And down here, there's no potential energy, but the speed is the quickest. And then from here, it bounces up to the next point, and then this is where it stopped. So for me, I look at it in terms of the speed. How fast is it moving down? This is why they say don't try to catch the knife, like don't catch falling knife. Because when it's moving really fast, like if a truck is moving really fast, you get in front of it, right? Of course, it's going to hit you. You're probably going to disappear, right? But if the truck is just parking there or moving slowly, you can walk right in front of it. So that's why over here on this whole way down, anyone longing here would eventually get hurt real bad. Maybe scalp trader with really, really good technical analysis and like high risk tolerance can maybe walk away with some profit. But in general, it's not a good idea, right? You want to look for where the market is slower like this, right? If you remember where I short for ETH is somewhere around here, right? And if you go into the hour chart, you will see that this whole move, it go up, it trending really quick. And this is a daily candle, but you can see that 1, 2, 3, it kind of slowed down in this one range, right? So if I were to short, I would not short it on the way up. I should be sitting out and wait. Or if I have a long position, I should just hold it. And then when it slow down, I should be thinking about like, okay, should I cut my long? Is it going to go more? This is normally when the market slow down, that's where I reanalyze. Or it have a strong rejection, right? But normally a strong rejection get bought back up really quick, right? Like as you can see going down, boom, right? And everybody thinks like, okay, there's a long wick, it's gonna go back up. I can long here. Price really go up, but what does it do next? Go all the way back down, right? And even like fake out a little bit to this low to scare some people. But if you look at the macro, this entire thing is really just sideways. Why is that? Because before that, it fall down pretty quick. And even on this fall, when you look at it, you can see it of it as picking up of speed, right? And the first fall kind of go in this direction. And the next one, it go here. And the next thing is go here. right? So if I just turn off the chart, you can really see that this is like a waterfall. So sometimes I don't FOMO with the market, but when I see this and this, I know that if there's weakness here, I can short it because the momentum is also picking up. This is like when the pendulum is starting to swing, right? And I can hop on real quick. So somewhere in this area, if you see there's weakness over here, if you can identify some weakness, this is a good short, right? The thing with technical analysis is that it will show you all these reasons for long and short. Oh, you use this indicator, you use this moving average, right? I should long here, I should short here because there's divergence. But I mean, I bet you that on this way down, when it's really quick like this, when I go into a smaller time frame, I can find a lot of bullish divergence. But if you just long those bullish divergence all the time, you'll probably be in a little bit of profit, and then you get stopped out, or you're in the red, or you walk away being happy, and then you come back and you're like, what the fuck happened, right? But something here, when it slowed down, it make more sense, make a whole lot more sense, right? Same thing here. In this area, it dropped and then it fall back up to a retracement level. But overall, if you look at this whole thing, it's still going sideways, right? So it fall from here, it could fall. But when you see something like this, there's a waterfall, there's a little bounce, and then kind of going in this direction. This is why I tell you that my thesis for 1600, it could still happen, because it can totally do this. You see what I mean? So I think if I think of like waterfall, that's just like one rock over here, but doesn't mean that this is the bottom, right? This can still happen. When I look at it, I still see that there's a way for it to continue going down, right? What I do like, and the reason why we still trying to long it over the past few days, right? Like this area, for example, I see another rock that's stopping this flow and creating another bounce, right? So there's a high chance that this is the bottom, because you look at the waterfall, where are the rocks? All at the bottom, right? What's the chance of the waterfall going down, hitting a certain, like this go up really quick and then this sell off right here? When you see this, you know that you should be getting out. Sorry, I'm not gonna pick up that call because I don't know who it is, right? So this fall, you see the big change in speed right here. So you know this is gonna be really big, right? Hit the ceiling, technically going sideways, but when you zoomed in from the moment it hit the ceiling, this go down really quick. Just within the first like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days, right? Really violent. And this should tell you that, okay, this is probably gonna continue. This is gonna be really scary. Let's get the fuck out of this market, right? So something very simple like that, but that's the advantage of price action, right? So the first thing for me is looking at the flow with the market. When the market is something like this, for me is this harmony, because I think anyone can look at this chunk, which is the summer of 2021 after the fall. When you see this, right, you know that it's pretty choppy. You can kind of look at this and you see it's choppy. It's in this harmony. This whole thing is trending. This whole thing is trending. The trending market is when the speed is the quickest. So you want to be in that direction. Any retracement against that is where you want to enter. So I see this trending down really strong. If I see a green candle the next day, but the volume is not really high, like for example, this day, right? All of a sudden I see one green candle, but the direction is strictly pulling down. It started really violent. I see this, volume is really low. This is where I want to short. If I didn't end up shorting from here, or if I didn't exit, this should be my exit. Because I know that the momentum is really quick and it could be one small stop. It's like you try to drive across the country and it's just a gas station, right? You stop there and grab a meal, maybe take a sleep a little bit, right? And that's why I want to hop on the journey. I'm like, hey, you going across the country? Let me hop on the truck real quick, right? So these are the level where I want to enter. So that brings me to my next thing. When the market is trending really quick, you want to enter either for like a continuation or for a reversal. It's better to be late than be early. It doesn't make sense, right? But sometimes it's better to be late. I don't want to short from here because this whole thing is moving up. I mean, there's technical reason for shorting from here, especially if you look at BTC. But I don't want to short right here. I really don't want to short here because this can easily be just a correction and then it move up really violent and clear me out, right? But when I see a violent in the other direction, a small stops, and then a rejection in some important level, that's why I can go against the previous trend. Otherwise, I would look for a long. So like this one is moving up really quick, right? This is probably where I would want to enter if I think that this is a strong uptrend these days, right? Because it's moving up really quick. It's also a continuation of the previous flow. It's still going, and it's starting to go parabolic, and it goes sideways a little bit. Right here, if you just look at the flow of it, you can kind of see, right? You go from here all the way to here, and then it's starting to pick up, and then it goes sideways, something like this. If you look at this, then there's really two probability. Either from here is going to reverse, right? Or from here it's going to start like really picking up. That's it, right? Because the direction over here, the slope is not really high, but this one, the slope is starting to pick up. There's only two probability, right? And it's giving me two days of sideways. Everything is kind of reset. So if I want a long, it would make sense for me to enter here and put stop loss maybe right below the low of the previous day, or maybe this one, right? Because this is the last run up before it stalled. This is the last mile before that gas station that we talked about. So I would maybe put a stop loss right under here, because this is where the last moment of the speeding or the trending market before it either continue or reverse, right? So I would, and if I were to long, and I see this is probably a good take profit level. And this is probably a good way to, a good point for me to start adjusting my stop loss. I see this, things are slowing down. Okay, if I were to long from here, maybe I'll bring the stop loss up to this level, right? Just to lock in some profit. Okay, so now that we're understanding the trending market, I'm gonna talk a little bit about the candle itself, right? I think everybody know, open, close, high and low. If you just look on like, candle pattern, people talk a lot about like engulfing candle or morning star and evening star pattern and all that. You can look it up. But for me, in my analysis, I always go with 3 steps. The first thing for me is always, number 1 is structure. Without the structure, I wouldn't know if I'm longing or shorting. Structure is the most important thing for me. The second thing is the pattern. And the third thing is candle. All right. So I'm going to explore this idea with you guys. Pattern, I'm going to explain it first. Like structure is where you determine if something is bullish or bearish. And also a lot of your stop loss come from here. Pattern is things like, falling wedge, head and shoulder, cup and handle, rising wedge, move flag, right? All of these things. And then candle analysis is where you're looking at, each of these and you're like, okay, is this an engulfing candle? Is this a morning star? Is this a morning star, right? You see a red candle, another red candle that's like slowing down, maybe a lower wick, and then, it blow past that, like this is a morning star, should I long here? Things like that. But for me, a lot of people focusing on 3, or a lot of people talk a lot about number 2. I don't see a lot of people talking about on Twitter that talk about structure. And if they do, they're normally really good trader, right? Like for example, I don't know if you guys know like Pentoshi and all that. Like these guys talk about structure a lot, and they always throw out like crazy thesis. They're like, it gotta go here, right? And everybody laugh at them. But like a couple months later or a couple weeks later, it happened, right? And then like they don't post anything because they're probably like, who's laughing now? So structure, how do you determine something? All right, we always talk about like high, low, higher high, and higher low, right? I'm gonna share with you a couple rules for me to determine structure. Let me just remove the volume just so that our chart looks a little bit clean. Okay, I'm just gonna take this as an example. A lot of time, if someone is asked like, is this structure like bullish or bearish, right? Or is it sideways? They look at it and they say, okay, this is this whole thing is bullish, this whole thing here is bearish, right? Or some people say, okay, this whole thing is bullish, this is bearish, this is bullish, this is bearish, right? I'm like, you are giving a structure after the price show you what it is. In price action analysis, you want to look at the structure when it happened. So one of the way I do it is I'm just gonna walk with you guys from the very beginning, right? So let's just say starting off from this range, right? I see this high and I see this low. Until price decisively break this level, we're still in range, right? Like you see it break out a little bit, it fall back down, right? Break out a little bit, fall back down, break down, fall back out. So this entire time for me, we're still in a range, except we are consolidating here. We're starting to consolidate here, and consolidating under resistance is normally bullish. So it makes sense how it break out, right? Now what I do next is the moment this breakout, I'm gonna determine where the high is. And for me to know the high, I gotta wait for some sort of reversal. So when they get here, I wouldn't know that this is the high. I would have to wait for at least 2 candles that closes below it, right? Technically for me, one of the rule is if I'm analyzing this, if I treat this as a high, I'm gonna look at the 2 candle before it and the 2 candle after it. If this is the high, then out of these 5 candles, this have to have the highest close, right? In this case, that's not it, because this candle closes below this one. So the high for me actually come in here. This actually is the high for me, not the previous one. Oh, what happened? Oh, what happened? Sorry guys, my internet just refreshed. Where are we? You guys still hearing me? Are we okay?
Yeah, can hear you fine, thank you.
Okay, cool. All right. Okay, so let's go back to that example. We were here. Okay, so this is the high for me. Because if you notice, this is the highest close. The next candle is under. This one pump up a little bit, but it's still under, right? And obviously it closed higher than the previous candle. So for me, this is the new high. Now that I have a new high, I'm gonna use this. I'm gonna use this just so we know like where the high and where the low are. I think there's another one for this, right? And just for our sake, I'm gonna use turn to red so we know. Okay. So now that I have the next high, I'm gonna ask myself a question. Where's the lowest point between these 2 highs? Specifically between these 2 highs. So if I put a line here and I put a line here, what is the lowest point in this range? It's still this one, right? So now I know I confirm that this is an important point in the structure, right? If I were to long anything and I don't know exactly where my stop losses are, my stop loss will always be under this thing, because structurally, this is where it confirmed bullish, right? So my stop loss is underneath here. It could dip below here and still go back up, and it could even get here for this structure to be bullish, right? Moving on. Now that I have the next high, right? I'm gonna remove this line because now I know I have a high here, I have a low here, I have a high here, right? Now we're technically in a bigger range. And this thing was just like a stopping point. And you can kind of see from that whole structure, right? This is a lot bigger. Within this range, some of the key level I would look at is mid-range, right? Where any reaction would happen. And maybe I would be able to identify that it's bullish here. But by here, I will notice that we establish a new range, right? And for the first half of it, actually for the first quarter, before we identify this high, we're trading at the lower half. The moment we break through, we spend another like quarter of the time to establish a new high. And then we're only trading in the upper range. And then we're consolidating here and even have a breakthrough and then a retest. The moment I see this, I know that there's a high chance we're going to create a new high, right? So now this is where it decisively break through. I'm going to have to follow this candle to see where my next high is. right? And like I said, the high needs to close higher than the previous two candle. So first point where when I see that outside of the range is right here, this candle at this point, right? It closes higher than these two, it closes higher than these two, and it closes outside of the range. I'm gonna put this right here. Okay. Now that I have that, I'm gonna continue the same thing. Now that I have the next high, I'm gonna look at the two high over here in this range, and I'm like, where's the lowest point in this whole thing? It's this little wick right here. Now that I have that, I know that's my next low. We're no longer in this big range. Now we're trading in this range. So now looking, once I have four things, I'm gonna look at it. I'm gonna have a high here, I have a low, I have another high, I have a low. This for me is bullish structure. So if I only look at the market starting from this date, I shouldn't be entering any long until I have this. The moment I see this, I'm like, I'm gonna wait for long, right? Either a retracement of this leg or retracement of this whole thing, or something like this where it consolidate, right? Again, I'm gonna put something like the mid-range over here, and you notice that this really strong move up, that break out of the old range, it kind of retested like the mid-range over here, right? It never get back down there. And then over here, consolidate, right? Tested this as resistance like 1, 2, 3, 4 times, and then the breakout. So technically, I can enter a long right here. Even though it's not the best entry, but I can definitely enter a long here, and my stop loss will be underneath my structure level, right? And the next thing I have to ask myself is, where's my take profit? I want to enter at least on like a 1.5. So if I enter here and the price don't at least get to 4,000, this is the bad trade. Of course, in this case, you don't just blindly enter right there. But if you do strictly based on a structure, you can kind of see that it have like high probability, right? Also, we're gonna continue moving on, right? Same thing. Where do we see breaking out of this range and create a new high? Is here, right? And between these 2 points, where's the lowest one? Is right here. So now we're trading in a new range again, right? And I know that now my structure, this is my low, and this is my high, and so on. You guys can continue this and really see where all the key structural point are, right? And you can ignore all these things in the middle because these are just noise. If I just draw a line like this, it make a whole lot more sense how to trade, right? And it's about like how to identify those points. And the mid range for me is really important, right? I see the mid range here, like when it's still ranging here, you can enter all your scalp easily. If it enter wick through here and you can see some sort of weakness, you can short it, take profit at the mid range, take profit at the low range. That's it. You cut at the middle. If you see it like consolidate here, you can wait for it to go down, right? But if you see strong reaction like this, and then you see, some bullish divergence, you can cut the rest of the trade in profit, right? Same thing here. From the low, you see a wick through. I bet you on the low time frame, there's some like bullish sign over here, right? From there, you can enter your next trade. This one for me is not a high because it doesn't close higher than this. This one is technically a high, right? Real quick, I'm just gonna finish this all the way to the top, right? Boom. Now we enter a new range. This is the same, right? And then what's the next candle that close higher than both? This one. In between these two lines. So, okay, this is where the weird thing happened. Right here at the very top, if I were to look at between these two high, right? Because I know that that's why my next high. And again, I don't know this is the high until the close of this candle, right? So by May 13, I see that drop and I'm like, okay, this is the high, right? This is where I go in and start looking at the structure. Where's the lowest point on this, right? The lowest point is right here. It's the beginning of that candle, right? So now I have a low here, but I think you guys can kind of already see how weird this is, how you get like a high and a low at the one point, right? Like for me, something like this is just abnormal. If we were to stay here, then I have like a really bullish structure that go all the way up the whole time, right? I don't have any lower high or lower low. This, even though it's still a lower high, it doesn't make sense for me for the low and the high to technically be in the same candle. So I think right here is already like indecision zone. So this is the level where I would pay more attention to. I would definitely pay more attention to this range if price ever get back there, right? And you can notice how that big drop where we say that, okay, the same analogy of the waterfall, and then we take a little stop, right? It's right in that range, and right there you see how resistance twice is a good technical reason to short, right? Also, you notice how price went up July 22nd or 23rd. I remember to go all the way up, right? Everyone is saying it's going to be really bullish, right? Get up here, get shorted down. Everyone's like, okay, shit, this is a lower high. That's it for crypto, right? This is like where like this belief come in, we're going to go to 20K. It never happened. Why is that? Because this whole range was like where this is where the weird shit happened. So of course, when price get into there, you're gonna expect some weird shit, right? And this is some weird shit. But eventually it continued. And even here on the way down, right? You see how the first bounce, it go right into this range, right? Because if it go into here, this is gonna be a little bit abnormal. This is gonna be a little bit weird. And trending market is not weird. This is definitely a fall from 69 slow bleed all the way to 33K, right? So of course it would bounce somewhere around here. It's just funny. I never even noticed this. And then go up and see where it bounced the next time, right? Go bounce all the way to the top. And then this is where it decides. It's like, you see how as soon as you get out of that range, like all these candles are really small, right? So much indecision in here. The moment it's out of this range, boom, capitulation all the way down, right? And then of course we trying to get back into here. There's all these rejection, right? That's why when I see weakness over here, I do that short from like 31 something or like 3200. I remember it's like 3180 or something, right? Short down. I take some profit the next day, it get back up here. I think some of our trade was like in the red. Actually, our entry is like somewhere around here, right? But I added to my shorts here. I didn't take profit all the way until here. Why do I do that? Because I see this slow down a lot over here. Does that make sense? So the number one thing for me is structure. It's the number one thing. If you can identify all the structure point, then you're golden. You can just trade inside the range. You can just short the top, long the bottom, and outside of the range, you just follow the old trend. And if you break out in the other in the other direction, you wait for it and you see how it's reacting, and you see where is the abnormality, yeah, and then from there you can make your decision. So I'm gonna have to drop off for a meeting. Cool, yeah, I'll have the recording for you. Thanks for tuning in, man. Thank you, Dan. All right, so that's the first thing for me is the structure. From the structure, there's a lot of interesting thing we can figure out. But for most people, they like to trade a trending market. Look for a downtrend and follow the structure point, and then look for strength or weakness, specifically around where the market slowed down. If it's moving already, just skip it. I would just skip it completely. All right. Next thing is pattern. I'm not going to talk too much about pattern because falling wedge, rising wedge, like this, you can literally like straight up just Google like all chart or like stock pattern. There's a bunch of material that will show up, right? And candle analysis. A lot of people talk about like Harami candle or like bullish engulfing, inside candle. With price analysis, the candle are a little bit different. Won't be able to cover everything, but I'm gonna show you guys a really key alpha for me. Something really important. So I have something called a fractal candle. Something called a fractal candle. So in a fractal candle, also, sorry guys, my candles are not red and green. It's also because of psychological reason. The green candle tends to make you more excited and more energetic. The red candle kind of inflict fear a little bit more. So I change it to monotone color. On your trading view, you can change it to any color you like. But if you are used to green and red, we can do that as well. Actually, I'm gonna go back to that default real quick, just to. Yeah, just as an example, I have a template here called confuse. I'm gonna apply default first. So most of us are used to seeing this, right? Green candle normally make you, more easy on the way up. But I mean, if you're making profit, you should be thinking about taking profit and protecting your risk, right? Red candle just kind of creates something more aggressive subconsciously, inflict fear as well. Like you see any scary movie, like you see, it's either dark and cold, like blue light, or it's like red scene and it looks intense, right? That red kind of inflict fear, and if you just look at the red candle alone, especially when your position is red too, it kind of make you want to sell, but it might not be a smart thing. Right? If you sell, you should maybe sell here, not all the way down here, right? But I mean, 10 green candle or 12 green candle, and you see 3 red, that's nothing. But you see red candle, you see red position, and you see about like 10 different red candle, it's gonna get to a tipping point, and you probably want to sell. Like that's how these things happen, and you can imagine they regret like months after, right? So just as an example, I'm gonna go into a template called confuse, which is where I flip it green and red, and you see how weird this look for you, right? This just like, yeah, it's the same shape, but this doesn't look right. So for me, this is a really strong example that the color really affect our psychology, and I don't want to be affected by that. So, I choose like just a color theme. You can change this in your trading view. So any white candle for me is actually a bullish candle, right? Now let's talk about fractal candle. Fractal candle for me, there's two types. There's bullish fractal and bearish fractal. A bullish fractal candle is a candle that take out the low of the previous candle and then turn green. Let me find an example. Right here. Right here. So you see how this candle go down a lot, and then the low of this is at 1808, right? This candle it wick all the way down, and the low of this is, I'm gonna zoom in just so we can not be blind after trying to dissect this. So this is the previous low, right? And you see this candle would go all the way down and take out the previous low, but then it turned green. For me, this is a fractal candle. And very interesting. I know a lot of people look at like RSI, which is like the relative strength index. And we look for divergence and all that, right? But I'm gonna turn on RSI right now just so we can compare. Holy shit, what's all this? Okay, I already have RSI open. So you'll notice something very interesting, right? All the low point on RSI, like this candle, for example, right here, right? This candle, for example, is at this low, right? But right here, on these fractal candle, the low of the RSI is actually from the candle before. So if you find like divergence, normally divergence like this, if you zoom in on like maybe a lower time frame, you'll find some divergence like over here, right? But for me, I don't trade with RSI open. Like you see my chart is clean. I don't draw anything on it because I see this and I know there's probably some bullish divergence at a lower time frame. So just looking at the candle, if I see it take out the low and then it turn green, there's a high chance that there's some sort of reversal here. I just don't know how strong. I just don't know if it's a little bit and then go right back down, or to go past and then go down as like just a retrace, or this is like a main trend reversal. But if I see this, this is a good stop if I want to take a stop here and try to catch it, right? And of course, you notice how it run up, right? And over here, you get the opposite example where this candle previous high is right here. And then you get a candle that take out that high, go all the way back in, and then turn red, it turn bearish, right? This is also a bearish fractal. And again, if we look at the RSI, oh, I just removed it. If you look at the RSI, right? You notice that the high of the RSI is actually here, 52.59. This one, the RSI is actually 52.33, right? So even though a lot of people will look at this as a high, but the high actually come in here. And this show that on the lower time frame, there's probably some sort of bearish divergence, right? And if you want to take your profit, these are good level to take profit. So let's say based on price action analysis, right? If I were to take a long here, because I'm like, okay, what's my reason? It fall down really hard, seems to go sideways, fall down a little bit, doesn't seem to have momentum because look at this fall, really long, right? Then from here to here, it pretty much goes sideways, a little bit choppy. From here, you see another fall, but look at the length of the fall. Just comparing this, you can see that this was so much stronger than that, right? It happened quicker and fall down a whole lot more. This one happened over a longer period of time. It's not as steep, right? And it's a lot shorter. It only fall a little bit. Not to mention that these two levels are about the same. So we seeing some kind of flaw over here. And then right at that floor level, right at the same level, I see a fractal candle. So I can take a long stop over here, right? This is obviously a downtrend market. And at this point, there's a lot of fear. I don't know if this is just going to be a bounce and then the market is done. But regardless, there's got to be some sort of relief, right? And if I were to choose when the relief is, it would be here. You pay attention, every little bounce, even right here, you notice how it take out the low before it bounce, right? Same thing here, it take out the low before it bounce. On the reversal, you wouldn't, if you were to long here, you wouldn't be able to close here based on fractal candle, but this is where you would close. You see how it take out the high of the previous candle and then it close right here, right? So these could be a little quick scalp, like right here, you can scalp trade this just based on one thing, right? And then over here, bullish fractal, you can long. Over here, bearish fractal, you can short. I would be careful though, because if we use only fractal, you would notice that you would long from here. You would close your long, maybe enter a short here. You'll close your short, maybe enter a long here, and then you close your long to enter a short here. But you see how the range keep getting like squeezed, getting shorter. If it's too short, I would just cut it. Like if these two happen too close to each other and within the same price range, to me, it just showed that this whole thing is just indecision. Market is trying to make a decision. I would stay out, right? Now for me, for example, this one, the first capitulation, right? I bet you a lot of people think that this is it. It bounces up so hard, right? A lot of money pouring in here as well, trying to get the recovery because they still have the euphoria from the bull market. And then it fall back down. And I bet you when it take out this low, a lot of people think that this is bearish, right? And then they probably sell here and then see the market bounce again, right? So their emotion is all manipulated in here. But for me, I didn't long in either of this week, even though I identified this level as a high confluence, but I didn't long around here. I only scalp trade this. Like I take small stop and then I'm out, right? Because when I look at this, these are not fractal candle. If it's take out the low, but it's still bearish, then for me, this whole range here is still to be explored. There's not a high chance that this is like the bull trap, sorry, the bear trap, right? Even this candle too. It's not likely that it is a bear trap. So everything in this range over here can still be explored, right? Same thing over here. Anything in this range can still be explored, right? And as you can see, price explored that range for a long time before it actually flip bullish, right? If you miss this entry, I think this is a good level to go in, because if that's the range that the price needs to explore, And it before that, it created a double bottom, even go up and have a couple week here to retest this neckline, right? Double bottom, high confluence, volume coming in, and then finally here, you are out of this range. You can enter along by the close of this candle, right? And then you see all of these wick over here, even this red candle, right? It only just retesting the range. You could even enter another position here to get like a better DCA level, and then put your stop loss below the neckline maybe, because this is where the double bottom form, right? So being able to draw the range where the price is interesting and knowing where you should watch, it's already like such an alpha for me, because knowing that you would never take trade in those range, or if you do, it will be a scalp trade, something really quick, jump in, jump out, right? Like I see this, I can long, right? And then I see this reversal and it's also engulfing, I can take some profit here and just watch, maybe put stop loss to my entry just to be safe, right? And I see another thing here, I can keep watching until I see this. I'm like, okay, cut more of my position. If this is a range, maybe I can cut the entire position here, or I bring my stop loss to like the mid range just to be safe, to lock in all of half of the profit, right? And then it reverse, let it do its thing until it bounce. You can wait for days, enter right here, it'll still be safe, right? Does that make sense? So you really don't need to know too much, but just look at the range. Look at the range, right? Now, next thing for me is liquidity level. This whole market hunt for liquidity, this whole market hunt for people trying to long and short, right? Trying to hunt for take profit order and stop losses all the time, because take profit is also a buy or a sell order. Same thing as stop loss, right? When you place one, you think it's one trade, you're actually doing two order. If you're longing, you're placing the buy order, and then you exit with a sell order, and the opposite for shorts. So market maker are the people who buy and sell all the time, and they move the price. They know when to do market order, when to do limit order, how to trap people. So of course, they're gonna try to hunt for where the stop losses are, right? Think of this. This whole thing here, anybody that shorted here would obviously put their stop loss above this high, right? That just makes sense. It's just common sense for us, right? Put your stop loss above the most recent high, maybe bring it down all the way, right? Whoever shorted here, what would they do? Probably put stop loss right above, or if they are someone who want to be really safe and they think crypto is done, they'll put stop loss here to weather the volatility, right? If you were to short here, of course you bank a lot of profit. If you were to short here, it should just be a scalp trade. You should get out, right? Because this is really bullish. It get close to here, and from here, if it want to fall down, I mean, if it fall down, it should not even go up this high, or if it does, it should not go up in a straight line like this, and then consolidate there. You see how there's like 5 days where it's like going sideways around this range. That does not make sense, right? So there's a chance that it's going to go up. So anyone that's short here is a couple months late, right? You're shorting in September when you're supposed to short in like May, middle of May. You're 4 months late. Market is always going to be punished someone who's really late. I know I said it's better to be late than early, but just a little bit late. If our Zoom session is at 3 and you show up tomorrow, it's way too late, right? Showing up at 3:05, it's all cool. You know, same thing for longing, right? Someone with really good analysis and also a little bit lucky can long in this range. Like we said, we want to long above this range, right? So we could have long here. Anyone who long here is fine. Anyone who long here is fine. If you long over here, because if you remember on this run up, everybody's like, okay, I'm gonna wait for BTC to go down to 36K retrace, and that's where I'm gonna long, right? Like they're waiting for this neckline all the time. This is Eve, but they said the same thing. Market never gave them a chance. Go all the way up. Right here is where a lot of people FOMO. Pump up, and then right here is probably where they set stop loss, right? And the moment I see that, I actually shorted over here because on the low time frame, I remember I was scalping on a 15-minute. There's like a clear head and shoulder here. I just didn't expect it to go into a capitulation. So a scalp trade for me turned into like a lucky trade. It doesn't happen all the time, but I know I would not take profit around here. I remember showing it to some of my friends. I'm like, hey man, like remember that scalp trade I did? Like that 40x turned into like some crazy money. I did not expect it to go down that much. And they were telling me like, hey man, if I were you, I would cut it. And I'm like, nah man, it hasn't cleared this liquidity yet. A bunch of people is gonna put their stop loss down here, right? Right underneath this level. If you long here, any of these long, that's where your stop loss is. If you didn't take a profit here because you think BTC is going to 100K, you're gonna get rich, then you would just sit it out. You would just do this. You probably even add here because you're like, oh, I make so much money here. It gave me another chance really close to my entry or really close to my stop loss, right? So then you would probably try to long. Eventually, what does price do? Clear out the liquidity, even consolidate there for a little bit to make sure that anybody that long really late get chopped out, and then they go, right? Your actual stop loss should actually be down here, but you cannot weather that if you long here. Now, same thing. If this is a move to punish late longer, there's going to be a move to punish late shorter, which is right here. So when I long over here, I refuse to take profit until it at least clear this level, right? And I think the first reaction we can kind of see from here is it get up above and then a wick right down. This is also another fractal candle, right? And I bet you a lot of people open short here. It turned into just a scalp. You'll probably exit like break even, slight loss. Like this trade is not worth mentioning if you enter on those trades, right? But when I see this and I see consolidation in this range, then I know it's going to go higher. It's fine. It probably should clear out this stop loss. What did it do? Go all the way up, clear the stop loss, right? Bounce here a little bit and then capitulation. So when I see this, I don't like it because this for me is called a deviation, where it goes slightly above the range, trying to establish a support and then lose it right away. Not just losing it, but losing it violently with volume as well, as you can see, right? So for me, this is not a good sign. If there's no volume that confirm it, and it just enough to clear this out. For me, that's really bad. But does that mean we short here? We don't. We wait for a sign of, we wait for a good entry, right? It's better to be late than early, right? And all these drop and then remember it go all the way back up, right? And then this is where you can start to draw your trend line and all of that, or look for divergence. If you just look for divergence and short all the time, I bet you a lot of time you see, why is it a bullish divergence, but I can't long here because it still sweep me, right? Or like you're trying to short the top and then it keep wicking through and keep like stopping you out all the time. Market maker don't want you to be the one shorting the top. They got to be the one shorting the top, and the liquidity is a lot more, right? So what you do is wait for a sign of weakness. Right? You can draw your trend line here and be like, okay, the first trend line broke. You can draw another trend line here. If you want to do something like this, like on these low, you know, and you're like, okay, support, lost it, bounce into resistance, you can short from here all the way down, something like that, right? Or if you're really good with like analysis, you can probably enter here, because I believe that that's a fib retracement of this whole first leg down, right? So this go 1, 2, and then it's gonna go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 down. If I just draw a fib level, I have a couple template. Also I can share with you guys these like template as well. I have a continuation retrace. It's right in this range, right? Do a CC prime, which is just the 886 level. Like you see how I pinpoint right at the top. If I see this, I see a deviation just to clear the previous liquidity, fall down with volume, a retracement right into the level, and I see a fractal candle, then I have 1, 2, 3, 4 different reasons for me to open the short. Not to mention that I'm not shorting the top, but the moment that the top is formed, I know where my stop loss is. If you were to be shorting here, where do you set the stop loss? Is it here or is it all the way up, right? I never want to short the top. I want to short the first retrace after the top. But how do you identify the top versus, you know, just a bounce? Like that's where your range and understanding the market come in. So keep in mind that every run up, it will try to clear stop losses of shorts. Every run down, we're trying to clear the stop losses of long. Right? So based on the same thesis, that's why I said that for me, it still makes sense if the market go a little bit lower. Because if you see it over here, right? Create a new high, euphoria. Everyone remember the summer 2001. And then from there, it started trending. I remember this is where, like, if you were playing with a bot, this is where you start making some money back. You get chopped out a little bit here, of course, because this is like a fake out. I mean, look at this. Big pump, 3 days, big drop, right back to the same level, right? And then another drop just to clear out this liquidity. This whole thing is just like this harmony trying to trap you. And then go into a trending market. It looks strong. Everybody's like, okay, this is it, right? But I mean, you see no God candle. There's no like green giant dildo, right? It just go up here just to clear the liquidity, fall down, establish like a rising wedge over here, right into like a technical level before it fall down, right? And if you notice, where does it fall down? If this is the people who long in the right time, right? Longing here was late longer, right? You get chopped out. But here the market give you a second chance. But also this comparing to this is still like 4 months away from each other, right? So what does the market do when it fall down? First thing it does is dip right through that level. So if you short it from here, I actually have a small short from 69K, really small, because 69 was like a top, and I normally don't short the top. I only put in like a tiny bit, and I did like 50x, but it ended up playing out. And I didn't cut all the way until here, until BTC was like 34K. I know the wick all the way down to like 32, but I cut it at 34. I didn't cut on any of these bounces because my only theory was that on the big time frame, it got to clear some liquidity. So I think it got to at least clear the stop loss, right? Whoever long here, I think you're comfortably setting your stop loss over here. So it makes sense for me to at least get to this level. So I wouldn't cut until it clear that liquidity, right? Now for me here, let's talk about the market right now, right? I see this bounce, right? And if you notice, all these bounces are really short before the next move get really violent, right? Really short, get really violent, short, really violent, right? Really small reaction time. There's no stability over here. What we see here is that it go up a little bit. There's another drop, not as violent, and then there's another drop. So for me, I think this is a really important point. I think this is a real move. This first impulse up is the real move because it just clear liquidity. But in terms of structure or Elliott wave, it start with a small drop, a quick retrace, and it go into another bigger drop. So for me, it's very likely that this is the beginning of another wave to go down to finish this whole downtrend. And I think it makes sense if it clear out at least this level for anyone that long in the summer, or if anyone that buys spot and still holding here, they would try to inflict some pain, right? It's possible that it go down to this level, but I think if it go down to here, it would just be a wick. It should not go down here and consolidate, because if it go down here and consolidate, this market is going to shit, right? And market maker, they want to take your money, but at the same time, they gotta leave you a little bit of hope, because without hope, you're not gonna put in more money, right? If you buy altcoin here and it go down here and you didn't sell, I bet you still holding it all the way until today. Right? I think a lot of people did that. So under that thesis, I think the downside, if we fall further from here, it doesn't make sense to stop here. I know a lot of people say that, ETH is going to square up like 2100 and then run, create a double bottom, or BTC, like, I see 29 to 31K. I'm like, no, it either run from now, or if it get to 29, 30K, it's going to go lower. It's going to clear that level and maybe even consolidate there a few days. Maybe even after consolidating, another fake out before it pump. Got to do whatever to fuck up the most amount of people. Sadly, that's what this market is, right? And that's one thing that personally I don't like about trading, because a lot of time for me to make a move, I got to think, what needs to happen to mess up the most amount of people. And then sometimes I trade like that. I just think, okay, what's going to fuck up the most amount of people? I'm going to do that trade. I'm going to follow the market. And that's not because I want to bring anyone harm, but I don't want to be on the wrong side of the market. Right. And that's the one thing that I really hate about trading. But from here, what I notice is that if this is just a short squeeze, right? If this run up is just a squeeze and not an actual move, it makes sense for me if it take out this level. Because if this is a top, if 69K is the top, right, then this is a good short. This could be a technical short as well, right? This is a falling wedge. Someone could long here, trap out, short, right? So any of these could be a short. I think this is a weak short. This one is a weak short as well. This one as well, right? Of course, these are really late shorted. So if you shorted around here and this is a fake move, it would make sense for me if it go all the way like this. If it bounce all the way to here, clear out every single stop loss, right? And then from here, it can go to shit. But because this didn't happen, I still think that we probably gonna get a new all-time high. And all-time high for me doesn't just mean like, oh, excitement. It just means that somebody shorted here. Eventually, they're gonna get punished, right? But before that, probably makes sense to clear out this low first, right? So for me, only two scenarios. Either this is the absolute bottom, and then price should just consolidate here, maybe some bullish structure, maybe another fake out, and then go up, right? And then from here, it will just slowly take out this high, this high, this high, this high, and then this high, one at a time, right? Couple time, maybe from here, if it create like another structure, it might drop down just to like scare someone before it go back up. But this one didn't clear this level. It hasn't stopped out anyone here. So I think that it's very likely that this is a real move. So I see this. This is as like the first sign of strength. Nobody sees this as a sign of strength. Everyone's just like, oh, euphoria. And then right after that, they switch to like, oh, this is going to shit, right? But for me, this is a signal. This is like a hidden signal. It's like, hey, I don't know when it's going to reverse, but this shit's going to pump hard, right? Like this is the first hint. Where does it pump from? Does it pump from here? Does it pump from here? That's the question I have when I trade. So I'm like, okay, if it go lower, how low does it go? Probably go lower to here, right? And even as much as I shorted here, under the thesis that it could go to 2,600 or lower, I have to remember that this is a little bit lower than here, right? So technically, even though I could enter here, and it's a really good short, I'm a late shorter comparing to someone who short in January. I'm a late shorter comparing to someone who short 2 months late, right? So it's still likely for me that the market could do something like this. Does that make sense? I think it could pump, it could clear this and this at the same time, maybe even have a wick all the way to here. It's not that hard. It can 4,400. Imagine 4,400 now and then imagine ETH to 4,400. And in a few days or maybe in a week, it fall back down to 1,600. Would that fuck everyone up? But structurally, it makes sense, right? And nobody expects things like this. And when you catch scenario that nobody expect, that's normally where the biggest amount of money comes. Next
Pham,
concept I'm gonna, yeah.
Oh, just quickly on so around July last year, you're saying there's a possibility that it will sweep that low and get liquidity from the stop losses there. Who's holding on to that trade for that long? Like, is that quite common for?
I also want you to think of this more in terms of psychology, right? We are leverage traders, so we thinking of leverage, but also remember that future market is heavily influenced by spot prices. So if someone buys spot and supply is running out, people are longing, right? So the way I see it, the future chart and the spot chart is very similar. It's only off by a few cents, a few penny, so or a couple dollars, right? These can also be spot buyer. The way I see it is, imagine you didn't know about crypto in 2020, or you were in disbelief and you're trying to sell it here, right? Like let's say somebody was in crypto in 2017 You buy Bitcoin maybe at like 17, 18,000, right? And you're like, fuck it, I'm gonna hold this. This shit's gonna go somewhere. And then you think holding is easy, but 3 years, your money is stuck somewhere already like down like 80, 90%. You're still having to pay for bills and necessities, your friends having wedding and you have funeral and birthday and all that, right? You're still spending money, but there's no money coming in. You just want to like break even or get the most out of what you have, right? Out of here, I bet you somebody sell when bit was like 19.6, right? And then when it dropped, I bet you they were really happy about it. They're like, okay, all I lost is time, right? If you were in disbelief here, this is your regret. And after that regret, if you get back into here, this is your relief. But that whole process, right? If you were in disbelief when it's about to break out, and then you FOMO or you regret one move in the market, and then the first leg of the correction, you are already, excited. You're like, okay, I'm going to be a millionaire. Market is going to punish you. So if it get down here, imagine if it get down here and consolidate here, and maybe even show like some weakness. Let's just say, I think everybody know that, if you have like a rising wedge like this, then the chances that is going down, right? This is one of the bearish structure. So imagine if it go down, right? Clear liquidity, bounce up, and then go down here, and then consolidate here for a little bit, right? And then what you see is, you see price doing something like this. And then everybody's like, okay, we lost the range, we consolidate, all these are deviation, you have like a rising wedge, because you can draw something like this. Then everybody's gonna try to get out, right? And from here, if price go down a little bit, even just past this, everybody's gonna short. You know what I mean? But from here, if everybody's shorting, you just create liquidity for market maker, because the more it go up, the more people trying to short. People are losing money. People trying to DCA. When they get liquidated, their short order turn into a buy order, which puts the price up further and further, right? And even if they cut their trade, it's turned into a buy order as well. So the moment you trap someone, there's no way for them to get it back. The only way for them is to cut it. So I want to think in terms of spot as well. Of course, with leverage trade, I don't think somebody's going to hold that long. But for long-term holder, if you want to check them out, especially people who want to be long-term holder, but they are not that veteran with crypto, this is going to shake them up. For anyone that's holding, there's no point, right? Anyone that's been in crypto from day one, or any hodler, I know some people who hasn't sold a single Bitcoin, even though they entered since like 2015, right? Like multi-millionaire now, but they still go to work and they never sell a single Bitcoin. This move like this is not going to shake them out. And I mean, if they are long-term holder, there's no point of trying to shake them out. You're just shaking out anyone who don't understand it. And if you are in crypto now, I think you know that there's more people talking about crypto now than ever. We never had that. We never had that in previous cycle, right? There were a lot of people talking about crypto, but nothing compared to this level. News and amount of projects that come up and all that. So definitely going to try to clear liquidity. They're definitely going to try to clear liquidity, because more people means more poor decision with investment. Because the truth is, most people should not invest. Most people should learn about investing first, right? Now, the next thing I want to talk about is when you have a major low and a major high. I want to talk about something called frequency. Any of you guys here like are okay with physics, the subject? So a lot of this is application from physics, right? This is simple physics. I'm not gonna throw like numbers and things that mess you guys up. But clearly here, I have a low and I have a high, right? Price generally over this time, it moves in this one direction, right? Going up. Anytime the price move faster than the direction, which is this whole region, I call it the outside frequency. It swings out of the direction. When it go back in and it stay under, this is the inside frequency. Same thing for shorts, or when the price going down, right? So let's say this is the low, I wouldn't call this a low because it doesn't make sense for me. This is also another reason why I think it could go a little bit lower. Looking at this, you see how it clear. This is the inside frequency, right? Because it go down before the price should go down. And then all of this is the upper frequency. That doesn't make sense for me if the price fall down not as quick. But if I draw it like this, and you look just into the wave, you can see how it swing in and out of this wave all the time. You see what I mean? So this makes sense, but can this continue? That's my question. If this continue and then reverse, you already have like 2 deviation outside of the short range. So it should go down and it bounce back up. Or this is my low. So if I would set stop loss, even though this is the lowest point, I would not set it here, because in terms of vector, in terms of like the wave, the frequency, if I just zoom it in and you look at like a wave going down, you know, we learned from school, like, oh, a wave got to have like the part that go above and part that go below, right? It got to go up and down. Go into, you know, a hospital and look at like a machine measuring like the heart rate. It's up and down all the time. It's never flat line, it never run straight, right? So if I were to draw this as the swing high and swing low, this for me just doesn't make sense. This doesn't make sense. You see this, like it go above, go below, go right back up, finish, right? This one go below, go above, stay above, never go below. That's abnormal for me. But if you would tell me that this is the low and this is a deviation, I would believe it. But if you tell me that this, which is why ETH was like 2100 and BTC was 33K, you tell me that that's the low, I would not believe it, right? But why would this be the low and that this is a deviation when you have this? So based on those, I'm still thinking that, hey, it needs to go down more. So I look into the frequency. I look into the frequency and the wave, right? On the reversal, on any reversal, so this is my uptrend. Outside of it, it's gonna be the outside frequency, and underneath it, when it's underperforming the trend, is the inside frequency. On the reversal is when the inside frequency of the long turn into the outside frequency of the shorts. So when the inside frequency turn into the outside frequency, you know that there's some sort of change. Now, let's talk about frequency on candle. When I look at a specific candle, I'm gonna dissect this section just so we can kind of discuss what's happening. So on every level here, you see how it's like kind of falling down. I'm gonna do something called tuning, which is choose a level where it's like precise supply and demand zone. For me, on the run up, then any wick below is the inside frequency, and any wick above is outside frequency. And the way I determine it is I choose the wick that cut through the most wick without violating the body. So for example, in this range, this whole range right here, this is going to be my frequency up until this candle, right? Because 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 wick to the upside, right? It's go down, sell off, sell off, sell off all the time, right here, right? And then on the lower end of this sideway, it's probably, oh, it's actually this one. It's right here, right? So why price is going sideways here? I know that this is my outside frequency. This is my inside frequency. So if I were to short, I mean, down here, a lot of people were scared, right? Like when it go down like this and it bounce, people were like, okay, this is the chance to exit, or like somebody trying to short all the way down when they think BTC is over. Especially people like Pentoshi were tweeting like it's over here, and then some people will see it. The new data came in, their analysis changed, but they still based on someone else's analysis trying to short here. I would not short until there's a candle close underneath this. Because if this is my inside frequency and this is where the lowest point that keep pushing the price up, I would only look for short, start looking for short if I see the low the close below. I would not start a short immediately when that happened. If it fall all the way, I miss the short, that's fine. I miss the trade, that's it, right? But this one, I see it go up and it go up here. I'm like, okay, break out the frequency, I'm gonna look for a long. I'm gonna start looking for a long. And I think a good long for me is right here, because this is a fractal candle like we discussed, right? Take out the low of the previous one. In this case, it's a double fractal because it take out the low of 2 candle, turn green, right? Is there a volume here that confirm it? Volume is so-so, it's not too impressive, right? But it take out 2 lows. So I would watch here, I would enter along here, and then where would I cut the trade, right? Probably inside the range. I would put it inside the range or maybe even below the range at first, right below this low. Enter along here, right below this low. The moment you go up in this range, I have a new frequency line, right? Which is right here. It cut through all of these, right? And then my lower frequency is here. So the moment it break out of the previous range, then I can look, okay, if it close below here, I should be worried. Then only now I can, maybe if I want to raise my stop loss, I'll raise it to this level right below this week, right? But it's not too big of a difference from here. So in terms of price action analysis, like it changes all the time. Sometimes people ask me like, hey, what's your take profit? This is the downside of price action analysis. It's called price action analysis because the price always give you new data and your info changes all the time. If you pay attention, let's see if there's a certain indecision zone. I want to try to find some example for you guys. There's a lot of indecision. Okay, maybe just around here. Okay, you notice this candle right here, how it take out the high and then it turned bearish. First fractal candle, right? The next candle is the fractal candle in the opposite direction. And next thing, you have another fractal candle in the same direction, but just shortly after, price fall a little bit, and then you have one in the other opposite direction. So this is like, oh, sign of it maybe being bearish. Oh, sign of it bullish, right? This candle was like, oh, sign of continuation. And then it's like, oh, sign of a trap. 4 candle, lots of indecision, right? I don't rush with it. When I see things like this, I just wait. I just wait. And I think a lot of people have trouble waiting because if they think something is happening, there's like a feeling of FOMO that appears. You feel like you need to take action, you need to hop in, right? But for me, a miss trade is you just miss it. That's fine. That's the next one. There's always going to be the next setup. If not this chart, there's going to be another chart. If not crypto, there's going to be, commodity or stocks or something, right? Or Forex, like you can long short DXY. You know what I mean? So there's always another opportunity for you. It's just to identify it and then it happened. Cool. Now, if I call all the lower and higher wick of frequency, they could be inside or outside frequency. Then this brings me to my next thing, which is trend line and supply and demand zone. All right. So trend line, the thing with trend line that I don't like is trend line can be very biased, because somebody who just wants to long, they could draw a trend line. Someone who want to short, they draw a trend line like this, right? And they probably end up shorting here. And then the moment this short didn't happen, they would change the trend line and they would like, oh, right here, I'm going to short here. And then they go up and then they're like, oh, I'm going to cut it. They're like, oh, I got fake out. And then they draw a trend line here. And it take them like so many losses before they get one winning trade, right? And the thing with trend line is that you can draw it in any way you can. And you can call this is a trend line, or you can draw it like this and you be like, well, to me, this is just a deviation. You see how it resisted like 1, 2, 3, 4 times before it dropped, right? So this trend line is really important. People can say all kind of shit because you go back to what we were talking about. it's when your mind creates something, you really like that creation. So you'll be glued to that idea. So I have certain rule for trend line. Trend line for me a really good trend line will be exact. It will be exact. There's not much room for margin of error. This is unpopular opinion. A lot of people think that trend line need to be a range. That's, in my opinion, it's not. You see how sometimes I nail like absolute top and absolute bottom, right? It's because I really believe that if there is science to this, science needs to be exact, right? You're not going to go into a doctor and doctor is going to be like, well, I think I can kind of fix you. Let me just, operate on you. Like, that's not going to work. He needs to know exactly what he does, right? So for me, when I draw trend line, I want to make sure that it's the same way how I draw frequency line. It needs to cut through the most amount of wick without violating the body. So if I were to draw a trend line here, right? Let me just remove this for now. On this whole way up, if I were to draw a trend line, see, this would not be a trend line for me because it kind of violates this body. Something like this, right? And the wick can go out of it or touches right, right? But the most amount of wick that you can get. And of course, if you extend this trend line, then by this candle, I know I need to redraw my trend line. Everything needs to be redrawn, right? And let's say by here, you want to draw this bottom to this bottom just to see where it is, right? Can't draw it like this, can't draw it like this, right? But the most accurate one, I think, would be here. Because if you draw it here, it doesn't, if I zoom in, it doesn't really touch that, right? Not this one either, right? So it's this one, because this one, if I extend it to the other side, it's still cut through here. So this is more exact, right? And then this never get touched. So when you draw a trend line, just make sure that it go through the most amount of wick it can, and there got to be some point that's exactly at the tip of it. Otherwise, that trend line hasn't been played out, or it's just completely wrong, right? Let's see. Let's play around with trend line a little bit. Boom. See, normally people would draw like this. People would just draw like this, right? But let's just zoom in a little bit and see if we can get it more exact, and hopefully we get some confluence, right? Over here, I think the lowest wick is somewhere around here. And I would probably want to use this little tip right there. Yeah. So if I zoom in here, you see how this thing doesn't violate this body, but it cut through 1, 2, 3 wick. And then on this side, it cut through 1, 2, 3, 4. And this whole trend line doesn't violate the body, right? So for me, I would keep something like this on a chart, right? Because price fall through it. If it get back up to here, I'm gonna look for something like this, right? Let's see these trend line. Let's see down here as well, because we have a lot of wick at the lower end. Okay, let's say this whole falling wedge, when people were trying to long or short it. Yeah, that would cut through the candle. So something like this for me will be more accurate, because it doesn't cut through any of the body. Actually, need to be up a little bit right here. It doesn't cut through any of the body, right? And you see how even on these very last one, the very weak, tap that, right? So by this candle, if you were to draw a channel, by this candle, you can probably be able to draw this exact trend line, right? And then you would be able to identify strength and bullishness right here. The moment you see that, you're like, okay, I'm looking for a long, right? I'm looking for a retest and a bounce or some sort of strength, right? And the thing is, we don't know if it retests, but you know that you can look for long right about here. And then you see a fractal candle here, you can probably enter a small position here, so that if it bounces, you can hit it again, right? But if it doesn't, then you can run all the way. And in this case, it just happened to play out, right? But that's how I would do it. If I see a trend, like if I were to long in the summer, and I don't have any like advanced tool or any like extra analysis to identify like the absolute bottom, I would just look at the speed, right? Falling down really hard here, tend to slow down a little bit, get really choppy, the direction go down, but slightly, you see some bullish divergence, you see a trend line that capping the top, you see a full breakout, there's a lot of volume coming in around here, right? And then you see a fractal candle, then I'm like, okay, I have about like the speed change of the downtrend slowing down, breakout of the trend line, a breakout of trend line, right? Bullish divergence, and then a fractal candle. So I have about 4 confluences, and then around there, I would just enter. Rule of thumb for me is I look for at least 3 confluences. If I don't have at least 3 reasons that point in the right direction, I would either not take the trade, or I would just kind of skip the trade completely, even if it end up playing out in my thesis. Because the higher the amount of confluence, the higher probability for you to win. And I really think that if you just follow these rules, then it's a lot simpler than you think. You realize that you don't take as many trades, but when you do, you end up making a lot of money. And the chance of you winning is also a lot higher. So the last thing I want to share with you guys for today's session, how do I share this note? Give me 1 second. I'm gonna airdrop it over. So these are my step-by-step analysis. Things that I would do. These are handwritten note actually. So I have a couple steps, right? First thing first is I choose only one market to trade. And by this I mean like if you go into crypto, look only for crypto, right? Market in there will have some sort of confluence with each other. You know how BTC run and everything will run with it. You can look at like BTC dominance to know that if it's like and the confluence with BTC price to know that if it's like, you know, it's out season coming, is short squeeze coming, or is it capitulation, right? You look at all that. So choose only one market. The reason is I wouldn't try to trade crypto and then gold and then stock all at the same time. Because when you focus on one thing, you restrict the amount of information you have, and that allows you to analyze it a lot more in detail, right? And you see things that people miss as well. If you want to look at different ticker, I would go for high time frame because you don't need to look at a lot of different candle. If I'm going on daily candle, right, I only look at one candle a day on the opening and the close, right? So I don't need to overanalyze it. And if I can trade maybe like 5 different or 6 different charts, because that's only 6 charts a day that I'm looking at, and each chart is only maybe like 5-10 minutes before I make a decision, right? If you do low time frame, I would just like scalping, you would focus on only one. That's why you see like most of my signal would just be BTC or ETH, right? Like the 2 that normally follow each other. When I think out season is coming, I switch slightly to ETH because it's less volatile, but it normally outperforms Bitcoin. Step 2, I would choose one time frame. I would just stick to it. Just one time frame. If you're a scalper, stick to scalper. Like stick to low time frame. If you only analyze 15-minute chart, look only at 15 and then maybe 5 minutes. That's it. When you see something interesting, you zoom into one time frame lower and then dissect it, and then you go back to the time frame to decide if you want to make a decision. Right? If you analyze only 4-hour candle, then wait for the 4-hour candle to close and signal something interesting. You can zoom into 1-hour candle to choose an entry, and then the moment you enter, you have your condition, your CEST, right? Condition, entry, stop loss, take profit. When you determine all of it, then you go back to 4-hour time frame and then only watch that. Don't zoom into detail because extra information will only give noise to your analysis, right? Too many time frame will reduce your accuracy, and the more time frame is more noise. So choose one to stick to it. I would also recommend choosing a time frame that fit with your lifestyle. If you are a day trader, then small time frame is good, right? If you are working full time, you have kids and you have lots of responsibility, I think daily candle or weekly candle is fine. People can take a 1,000 trade. You only need like 4 trade a year. You still make a lot of money. So the amount of like price info that I'm looking at when I'm trading, I only look for like 100 or 200 candles. max. I don't look at more than those candles, right? Because I mean, if I'm analyzing price of Bitcoin from, let's say, 2017, it really doesn't matter much now. It doesn't mean anything, right? So look at the past like 100 or 200 candles. Determine the structure of those like 100 or 200 candles, and you know, like, okay, is it trending, or is the previous trend picking up speed, or is it slowing down, right? If it's picking up speed, you want to hop on the train. If it's slowing down, you're going to try to scalp the sideway, and then you're going to try to look for reversal, right? High probability of reversal, continuously taking stab at those small position, high leverage, so that if you're wrong, you lose a little bit. If you're right, you hold that position for a long time and you make a shit tons of money, right? More than 100, 200 candle is not, it's just complication and it's info you don't need. But if it's too little, then there's no context. You don't get the feel of what the price is doing, right? The next thing for me is counting all the major and the minor extreme, which is just you know, all your high and low, identifying the solid and fake. I mean solid high, solid low versus fake high and fake low. By that I mean this is a low, right? This is a high. This is a low as well, and then you have like this is a high. So for me, if I only look at this section right here, then this is an uptrend, right? This is another low, this is another high, right? And I could also do this. This is let me just remove this. Let me show you real quick. These can be my high, and this can be my low, right? But structurally, this is my low, and this is my high, right? Based on the previous rule that we do for structure, we know that we're trading in this range, right? So this high, push it down to a low here, but this low is way above this low. Same thing here to go. This pushes it up, but it could never clear this high. This high here pushes it down, it never cleared the up. It actually cleared this low. Okay, so for me, this is considered a solid structure. This for me is a fake structure. So if from there the price can push past the previous high or low, then it's considered solid. If it's not, it's fake. So in this case, this is a fake high because it hasn't pushed it all the way down to here yet, right? Or possible that it's a fake high. Price could continue, you know, stepping down and then clear this, and then this could be a downtrend. For me, when I see this is just like indecision. It's just like, okay, maybe this is why I have to think about like the other side of the probability, the other side of the equation, right? Am I wrong? Should I exit? Should I flip short? Those kind of questions. This one for me is definitely a fake high, fake low, because from here it never pushed to here. I would just remove this completely. Okay, this one on the short-term time frame, this one is a solid, but on the longer time frame over here, this is still fake because it hasn't pushed down. So right here is like a hybrid extreme for me, right? Until here, and you see that this structure keep running and create another like minor wave in here, which eventually take out this high. So eventually, once this high is established, I would just remove this. Over here, some really small thing. If I see this and then I see this, for me, it's highly likely that this level is gonna get retested or get broken through, because if it's a fake low, it's not gonna hold, right? Only solid structure is very important for me. Fake structure, it's not very important, and it's where the noise is, right? Cool, man. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you. So yeah, back to that note real quick. So I identify where my major extremes are and where my minor extreme is. I count them and I draw them. I just line them up on the chart. And when price get there, I pay closer attention to it, right? I look for the last major and minor supply and demand zone. And by this, I mean the precise supply demand zone, which is drawn the same way how we draw those frequency. So let's say this is my highest high, right? Eventually, if our BTC is gonna go to a new time frame, a new all-time high, it's gonna have to retest this, right? And from here, I need to know that there's supply demand in here. I'm gonna draw. First of all, I'm gonna draw the first line that go to most wick without violating the body, and I think it's this low, right? I think if we zoom in, then this go through it a little bit, right? This is not part of the top structure. This is the first breaking out. And then up here, it would be this one. So for me, once I identify that lowest and highest, then I know in this upper range, this is the supply and demand zone. And you can see that from the first fall, when it go into here, it go right into the supply and demand zone and it go down. From here, I can identify this as like a double top, and I can see that, okay, there's still imbalances. There's still more people trying to sell than people trying to buy. It's not going to break through, right? Some people could argue, let me see if there's like a, trap long. Yeah, maybe here. If someone were to draw like a really quick trend line, something like this, right? Because they're still bullish from here. And they're like, okay, this is just a downtrend. They're like, okay, this is a breakthrough, this is a retest, right? And this is a second retest, let's just long. Chart doesn't give you a third retest, but it just keep going down, right? Like this is just a bad trend line. Thing with trend line is that if trend line going down, then every time it retests, the entry is lower, lower. If trend line is going up, every time it retests is higher, higher. Like your short entry is going to keep getting higher, right? And you don't know how far your DCA. That's why I like range trading, just going sideways. It's easier to determine your stop loss, right? From this structure and the fall down, you're like, okay, this is the exact supply and demand zone. I'm gonna watch the price when I get here. Get here, get rejected, fractal candle, another sell off. Right here is probably where your short is, right? You don't want to make a thesis first and then just blindly place an order and then go. Or if the price break through here and then retest and I see like consolidation here, something like this, then I can probably start looking for long signal, right? Because I know that this whole zone is just exact precise supply and demand zone for the top. All right, same thing for the bottom. We can probably do something really quick for the bottom, right? You got one right here, and then you got one right here, right? So when price gets to the bottom, I would look for sign of strength, right? And you can see first one, it bounced right here, right? We go through, bounce. Right now it's going on the third one. So either we have a 1, 2, 3, we have a triple bottom, and then we're gonna go up, or it's gonna break this, because we all know that the more a zone get retested, the weaker it get, right? Right now it's serving as support, but if we keep getting touches again and again, we might lose it, right? And based on that, again, it also makes sense for me if we end up losing this down here, right? But short of this, the reason I cut is because this is a supply and demand zone, and then I see a fractal candle. A couple of days later, we see even a lower fractal candle bouncing all the way up, right? You see what I mean? So going back to that note, I look for the major supply and demand zone, right? And then you can maybe draw your trend line. Trend line come in after, and divergences and all that come in from step 7, right? Choose your time frame, choose your candle, counting your extreme, because structure first, right? Looking for the major supply and demand zone, because that's where the biggest reversal or the biggest changes happen. Once you draw that out, then you can scalp trade in between those all the time. Look for the type of flow, like, is it going fast? Is it going slow? Is it, does it seem like it's hitting some kind of ceiling or some kind of bottom, And then you can start scanning for praxeology element, which is like fundamental, like looking for why would people sell here? Why would people buy here? Is it in extreme fear, right? Like, don't just look at fear and greed index and then it's like, well, it's at -9, I'm gonna buy, right? It's probably still gonna be -9 in another week when the price is 20% cheaper, right? And then from there, you start looking for the optimal buy and sell, which is your CEST. All of that come into step 10. And finally, It's where you draw your line, the trend line, your technique, your pattern, everything come in last. So as I mentioned, first thing first is I choose just one market. I think we already do this, right? Choose a time frame that fits you. I could give you guys some signal and help covering for the losses the bot gave, but my time frame and my signal and my style of trade might not fit you. So choose something that fits you and do just that. Amount of price, look for 100 or 200 candle, right? No more, no less. You want to be able to feel it without overthinking. Identifying all your major extreme and minor extreme, know which one is more important, and then go from there, right? Draw your supply and demand zone. You know that by there you need to watch and then make a decision, or just know that in between anything can happen, right? Like right now it's bouncing between the lower supply demand zone and the higher supply demand zone. So that's why a lot of my trade are scalping, right? And then you can see the trend. Is it bullish right now? Is it bearish, right? Like right now we still continuing the bearish, but the bearishness is a lot lower. We tend to hit the floor, and right now it's triple bottom so far. It's possible that it wick through and then bounce all the way up, but never get to 2100, or it's possible that it go all the way down and then a really quick V bottom reversal. Don't know. Look for the type of flow, right? Is it falling straight down? Is it stair stepping down? If it's bullishness, is it like just going straight up? Is it parabolic? Is it a giant green dodo candle and then create a new range sideways and then another giant dodo? Like I don't know. So looking at those flow, and look at previously in the chart, has it done it before? Because you can see some sort of pattern. A lot of time we see BTC would do a big move and it would trade sideways forever, and it would do another big move. It doesn't tend to flow or be trending too often, right? And then you can look for psychological or other reason, like why would someone want to buy here? Why would someone want to sell here? Right? Look for these optimal buy and sell, which go with your stop loss and your take profit. Then you can start drawing your line. You can start using the technique. You can draw all your moving average or divergences on MACD cross and death cross, all of that, like whatever you want to use, right? Or look for fractal bar like I showed you today. I'm not going to touch this metaphysical verification. For me, it's just I find high confluence with classical physics and Newtonian physics, and I do apply that a lot. So this is where my verification is. If I identify something already and then I apply physics to it and it also makes sense, then the probability is super high. But you don't need to worry about this, because I think the first 11 step is more than enough for you to make sure that your trade is solid. So yeah. I think I'm gonna give like a couple minutes for question. I did not realize that we go almost like 3 hours already. So I'm gonna stop here and I'm gonna take up some questions if you guys got any.
Yo, thanks for the session, man. This was absolutely amazing. It was like a really, really large amount of content in here, and I'll probably have to go through it again. I'm just sort of wondering, like, maybe that I know there's a lot more content you have. I don't know if there's really enough to structure another session. Maybe if there's a specific topic we want, but I think it would be sort of great if at the very least, maybe, once a month we can like maybe try and have a discussion group where we try and, during the month we try and apply whatever we're looking at, and we sort of discuss how we're sort of progressing and analyzing charts, just to sort of, or maybe we could just share it in the Discord, like, this is my thesis, what do you think? Because
I think it's a great idea. I think we can share it. There's a lot we can learn from each other, and it's very likely that some of us have different opinion, and I think the fact that we have multiple different opinion can help keeping us like open-minded and make sure that we never miss another possibility or another perspective, right? I think that's a great idea. I'm down to sit down and share with you guys like once a month, something like this. couple hours. I mean, this is a sharing session and there's a lot of like different key point I want to share. So it take a long time. But generally, I think we just need like maybe 30 minutes sitting down with each other and be like, hey, what do you think? What do I think? Maybe 30 minutes, an hour max. And then we should walk out of session being a lot more clear about the market. So yeah, I think
Yeah.
it's a great idea. I'm down to do it. I'm down to host Zoom all the time too, because my Zoom can host a lot of people and there's like no time limit on it. So I'm down to host once a month.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, man. And I think it'd be great if we kind of do it like the beginning of the month, because it's the, you know, the closing of the monthly candle, and there's a lot of info that we can look at from those sessions.
The one thing that we didn't touch on, but you mentioned, was like the probabilities of a move out of a certain pattern. Is there like a good resource for kind of starting to understand what those probabilities are?
I mean, I trade a lot, so sometimes I see a pattern, I can kind of feel it already. But if you look for it in writing, there's a lot. I will try to help you identify it. I'll try to look for it, and I can share that with you. But if you just look for like trading patterns, and then maybe put in a keyword like probability. I don't know if you know this, but in Google, if you put in like a plus sign next to a word, that make it like a keyword, and then they will show search result specifically with those keywords, and they will put that at the top. So if you put in like chart pattern and then put like a plus sign probability, it will probably show up something. But I'm going to take a look at some of it for you.
Right. Yeah. I'll take a look. So yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of like public material on pattern and probability, because it's one of the first thing people research.
I need to print these out and put them up on the wall or something. So
Yeah,
refer to.
I mean, I have a picture of all the pattern, but without like probability. So if you guys want, I can send that into the Discord. If you want to save it to your phone, or you know, print it out and look at it and all that.
That'd be great. Cheers.
Yeah, thanks, Pham. This has been brilliant. Thanks so much for taking the time out to, you know, walk us through this stuff. It's really appreciated, and you know, lots of new things to think about. And yeah, I really appreciate it. And I wanted to ask: is it possible, you know, with the video link, like, are you able? I guess that's why you videoed it, right, to share with people that couldn't make it. But also, I would love to go back through some of this stuff and, you know, digest it more, like some of it in their own leisure. Will you be able to share it in the Discord as well, please?
Yeah, I'll share that in Discord. This is actually through Zoom, so it's gonna record it to my Zoom server, and then there's gonna be a link. I'm gonna share with you guys, and you can actually download it from the link. But I think it only stay up there for like a week or so, because I do host like online classes, so it might get deleted. So I will post it. I would just recommend that you download it right away and save it maybe in your hard drive or your cloud or whatever.
Amazing. Thank you very much. Thanks again.
All right, friends. If that's all the question, then I think I want to wrap it up here. I just want to say thank you, because honestly, I'm not like really super social. I mean, I'm not like antisocial either, but I get like a little bit paralyzed in a setting with a lot of people, especially people I don't know. I'm better when it's like more intimate, like one-on-one, or if I have built certain like understanding of people and go from there. So, you know, thank you for supporting me, and, you know, really like value me in the Discord group. Like I was really surprised to get that amount of support, and that really motivated me to want to share more. And I want nothing more than for us to grow together and be happy together. So I'll share everything I know. I would love to hear what you know as well. I know in your process of learning to trade and discover, you probably will find things that I don't see as well. And let's, you know, exchange that and grow together, and, you know, make money, and hopefully make money purposefully, so that we can, you know, provide for people that we care about and do good for the world. And yeah, let's just learn and grow from each other. But
yeah, I was about to say, like, you're such a good presenter, by the way, like really good. and appreciate you like just taking time out for, you know, for free to show us this. So like, I'm obviously like thinking about what things I've come across that I can pass over to you. And what one thing, I'll send you over information on it, but there's a guy called TED Talks Macro that you might have come across on Twitter. So he's been building a tool called Lambda Strike. I don't know if you know about it or have trialed it. I think he's probably got a link from his Twitter profile, but it's basically a new platform that uses options data to give you confluence. And a lot of people are having success with it. So I'll send you the details of it, but there's a really, I mean, it's worth it just to access the Discord. There's so much sharing of alpha and trading ideas and stuff like that. So I'll share that with you in case that's of value.
Please do. That would help a lot, because I'm always open to different opinion. I don't trade based on those opinion, but I want to know what people are thinking. I personally, I do follow a lot of, sorry guys, I just had to move because I'm actually at a cafe and someone booked my table for this time, so I just got it. But I look for people opinion because I want to know what they think. And a lot of people on Twitter, especially people with large following, I tend to look at how many reaction they get on each tweet. If the tweet is bullish or bearish, and then I also look at whether that have a reaction on the price. And personally, I have my own rating for how much someone can improve price, because, you know, like I said, it's butterfly effect, right? If someone have like 1 billion people follow and they like buy Bitcoin, like a lot of people gonna buy it.
Yeah, I get you. Yeah, completely get. I actually think he's one of the most underrated people on Twitter. He's got a not a big, you know, a few tens of thousands, but I'll send you his Twitter and the link to his tool, and you have a look and see if you're interested.
Thank you, man.
Awesome. All right, I
think we're gonna wrap it up here. Thank you guys. It's been great. Wow, 3 hours. We go a little bit over. I hope it's not too much inconvenient. And thank you for tuning in from, you know, all around the world. I hear some UK accent. I know South Africa. We're in different time zone. I appreciate it so much. Thank you guys. And,
thanks a lot, man.
Yeah, we'll talk more in the Discord. Peace, guys.
Cheers, everyone.
Cheers.
Thanks again.
Thank you.